Even on, okay. I'll call the meeting of the Administrative Services Committee for September 7th to order. Roll call, John Collins.
Here.
Carlos Acosta.
Here.
Michael Vijay.
Here.
John Young.
Here.
Pam Altoff.
Present.
Jim Kearns.
Here.
And I'm here, and we have Kay Bates online. Can I have a motion to allow Kay to?
So moved.
By Pam, seconded by Jim. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay, Kay, you're welcome aboard. We have a full board.
Thank you.
Are there any public comments signed in?
It appears not, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, member comments, please. Mr. Vijay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, everyone. After hearing about a discussion in California related to potential pay increases, I just wanted to bring to this committee information that it appears that California is seeing upward pressures and maybe setting a minimum wage of $22.50 per hour. Given that being the case, that continue. I am not saying that that happens in Illinois, but logic would assume that that would probably continue putting upward pressure on other states. So I just thought the chair and committee members and the public would like to know. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield.
Any other member comments? Not seeing any. We're still about 7 minutes ahead of Nicholas Feda for Ethics Commission. I don't know if anybody's out there. Scott, is anybody here yet or not?
Mr. Move to approve the
Area
minutes.
50 is here, but not Area 40.
Okay.
So I need to approve the minutes.
Well, I'm okay with letting him go first if everybody else is. I don't. No. Mr. Haak, you want to be the first guy on the?
Sure, why not?
Okay,
Did we
come
approve
on
the
up.
minutes?
Point of order.
Yes.
Go ahead.
Did we approve the minutes?
No, we didn't.
Let's
You
do
wanna
that
approve
real
the
quick.
minutes?
Let's do that real fast.
Okay.
I make a motion to approve the minutes as presented.
Seconded by John Collins. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay. Second item that we're pulling out of order then, Mr. James Haak, is it Haak or Hack?
Haak.
Haak is at the end of the table. He's nicely agreed to go first rather than waiting for Mr. Feda to show up. I don't know if you know everybody here. I'm Joe Gottemoller. I represent current District 3.
John Collins, District 2.
Carlos Acosta, District 5. Michael Beecher, District 1.
John Young, District 5.
Pamela Altoff, currently District 4, soon to be District 6. We hope.
We hope.
Jim Kearns, District 6.
And Kay, if she can hear us, Kay Bates.
Hi. Yeah,
And
Say District 4, Kay.
yeah.
all right. If you'd like to tell us a little about yourself first, just introduce us and tell us why you're interested in being on the Ethics Commission.
Sure. My name is James Haak, I go by Jamie. Live in McHenry, lifelong McHenry County resident. I've always had an interest in some sort of politics/government work, but never wanted to run for office. I currently am a clinical educator for a medical device company. We have a strong ethical obligation with our products and our line of work as far as making sure that we fill out mod reports and AdvaMed and make sure we follow all that. So figured, Ethics Commission kind of follows the same thing. Like you have to, the same type of guidelines, same type of idea, faced with adversity every day. People in healthcare want to cut corners, and it's our job to make sure that they don't, and if they are, we report them and follow up with all the paperwork. So, my background, I've always been involved in the community. Right now I'm the quote-unquote equipment manager for the Crystal Lake Strikers, which is a local drum line a lot of you guys have probably heard of. I'm kind of the default road man for them. So, and my daughter's in the drum line. So I was part of Crystal Lake Babe Ruth for a long time, vice president of their prep league. So just always wanted to kind of get involved somehow, but didn't want to run for office. I thought this would be a good avenue.
And Jamie, you've applied for this position before,
yeah,
have you?
a while ago, yeah.
Right, but
Yep.
this is,
Yep.
just showing your interest.
Yes.
Questions? Mr. Vijay.
James, may I call you James?
You sure can.
Thank you. James, in the position that that you're applying for, it's a unique position in that it may require a great deal of research and teamwork. Do you feel that your background lends itself to that?
Yes. So I basically, in my role, transparency, I was laid off 2 weeks ago, so I'm talking about my role that I no longer have. My role, it was a work with a team. I think there's 20 of us in the country, and we all work together. We have monthly meetings as far as what we needed to do, what we needed to improve on. Travel all over the country covering hospitals and procedures and working with doctors installing new equipment and medical stuff. Yeah, so teamwork is part of what I do. Especially like even with if it lended to the strikers, we're a little family of goofball drummers that love what we do, and I myself am trying to grow the programs. I'm, organizing right now a big fall kickoff for them, trying to get more people involved. So teamwork is part of it. Communication.
Thank you. Are you back, Chair?
Mr. Collins?
You expressed an interest in being involved in government, but not running for office, which I understand.
Right.
But there's a lot of different committees and groups that you can volunteer for in government. What's drawing you to the Ethics Commission, being that this is your second time applying?
It's a checks and balance thing for me. I like keeping people accountable. Being down the middle and being able to look at everything fairly and making sure everything is run smoothly and correctly, keeping people accountable.
Mr. Kearns?
Odd question. Have you ever written any letters to the editor?
No.
Okay.
Any others? Mr. Costa?
I think one of the concerns in general with the Ethics Commission, and we see this on Springfield, is that the Ethics Commission will be utilized for political gain during a campaign. And just in general, what would kind of be your first reaction, say, if an ethics complaint was to come in 60 days before an election on a candidate? What would be kind of your first response, take on that?
Obviously, you would have to investigate it, look into see what the complaint is, see who the candidate is, get more background information on what that is, and then work with the team, come up with a good solution.
Do you think you'd be able to investigate that fairly?
Yeah.
And-
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Any others? So for full disclosure, you are one of 5 people who applied for one position. You are welcome to stick around as we interview others, or you're welcome to go on, and there won't be any other questions of you. But we, after these interviews today, we will select one to recommend to the full board. The full board will ultimately make that decision. Should come, 2 weeks from yesterday.
Okay. Thanks for your time.
Do you have anything else you'd like to tell us before you go?
No, that's it. Thank you.
Well, thank you, and thanks for applying.
No problem. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Anybody else out there?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Well, do you guys want to go forward and come back, or do you want to?
Yeah, let's go forward, yeah.
Okay. Routine consent agenda. Anybody want to take things off the routine consent agenda? Not hearing any. Can I have a motion to approve the routine
I'll do
consent
that.
agenda? Made by Pam, seconded by John. John Young, by the way. Sorry.
That's all right.
Roll call on the consent agenda. John Collins,
Yes.
Carlos Acosta,
Yes.
Michael DJ,
Yes.
John Young,
Yes.
Pam Altoff,
Yes.
Jim Kearns,
Yes.
Kay Bates. We're approving the consent
Yes.
agenda, yes, and I'll vote yes, so the consent agenda is approved. You want to try to do some budget stuff, or we, I know we're way out of order, but if there's nobody here to interview. Yes, John.
Question, if Mr. Feda is not here at 8:40, do we not interview him? What is our
Well,
plan?
in the past, I've tried to make certain everybody gets a shot. I don't know why they're not here. I mean, there could be 100 reasons, but,
Okay.
you know, if we get through everybody and there's one that doesn't show, they don't show. I mean,
Okay, I don't know what kind of latitude we're gonna give on time, so.
you know, and just trying to do other things that we can do. It's all tough.
I just, you know, respective time, is there any old business that we need to address?
We could probably do capital plan and some of those things if they're here. I don't know. No? You want to do yours? We'll do backwards?
I have a
Sure.
question related to old business when you get to that portion of the agenda.
Okay, go ahead, give it to us.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. At our last board meeting, we had a vote on revisiting the rules of the county board, and the board had asked us to revisit certain sections of that, and since it's not on this agenda, I'm going on the assumption it will be in October. If it is the chair's prerogative, I would like to have the administration send to us the issues labeled 10, 13, 14, 16, 17, and 19 that the board has asked this committee to re-evaluate and, if necessary, present it back to the county board. And so as such, for some reason, I cannot find my sheet, so I'm asking whether other board members have it, I don't know, but we are requested to go back over that. So can I assume that we'll be doing that in October?
Yeah, we just, as I'm sure you noticed from this agenda, it's not a small one. And there's just a limit to how many hours I wanted people to sit here. That's all. I mean, we will certainly do what the board asked us to do.
Right.
I mean, that isn't a problem, it's just a question of when. But I have no problem with having somebody get you 10, 13, 14, 16, 17, and 19.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay,
Can that be provided to all of us?
sure. Yeah, send
Thank you,
everybody. Can we do any others? Kray just got drug in. You want to do your budget?
No, how about just Pete's report?
I can do
Or
more.
can you do Pete's report? Come on, Pete.
I think at least you could follow if no one else shows up. One of the things we do have on our agenda in the next several months is updating the county website. We talked with a few of you about that. Kind of kicked that off, and Greg Shane and Alicia are meeting with offices and departments to talk about what the website looks like now and what that office would kind of envision. So we got that going. We did have a meeting with Chairman Bueller to kind of look at the county board's website, and we'll have something to show you guys here in the coming weeks. Yeah.
Can I just ask, are we going to have the availability of having links on our website that link to other sites?
We do know.
Okay, I know, but moving forward, we'll continue that. I don't want to, okay.
We have been doing some manager training the last several weeks. It kind of started in late August, and it's a three-part training that Cheryl has led, kind of a dynamic group of individuals, including Kathy Bowers in this office, and it's pretty cool. It's a long training, so we broke it into three kind of 2.5-hour sessions, but it's for our managers, and it's on building winning teams, and I'm really proud of what these guys have been able to put together. I've gone through 2 of the 3 sessions now. Last one will be later this month, but I just wanted you to know that kind of time and energy that's been invested in kind of that teams building for managers, and how to lead their groups. And it's really been good exchange of information in this challenging time of hiring and retaining right now, and the different ways people are approaching that. So I'm proud of that group for putting that together. The employee forums, I think you might have seen in my countywide email yesterday, we're going to kick those off next week. We're going to have 4 such meetings. Haven't done this in a couple of years because of COVID, but we kind of use this opportunity to set aside about an hour where Cheryl and I will kind of highlight some of what we heard in the employee surveys we did at the beginning of the summer, and some of the messages we heard from employees about things. And then we'll leave the balance of the time for just answering questions, identifying questions, we'll provide some written follow-up in some instances. So it's just a good time to hear what employees are thinking. We'll have one meeting at Valley High, one meeting at DOT, one meeting in the courthouse, and one meeting here. That's right. So it's just a good tension to touch people. The National Community Development Association has announced a 2-day course that they're going to be providing for people like Hans all over the country. But we're going to get to host it here at the Woodstock Opera House. So that'll be kind of a cool event at the end of October, and good for the local economy because there are going to be people flying in from all over to do that training here with the National Community Development Association. And we'll be partnering with the city of Woodstock to host that. I have permanently removed the what was once weekly, then every other week, and then every month meetings with superintendents related to COVID. That went on for a long, long time, and it was really great. It was a great opportunity for me to have connections, and Melissa just left, but for Melissa to connect with all the superintendents. But for now, those have been canceled, so we're moving on with that. I think that'll be all I'll say right now. We'll have a written report from the county administrator at your next town meeting in 8 days. So if staff is working on putting that together, Helen's getting ready. Nicole's putting some magic stuff together, so we'll get that one. Yeah.
I'm sorry, Peter. For the school superintendents, and that's fantastic. Is there a tacit agreement that if something happens again, that those meetings will start back up?
I think there's an expectation.
Okay, good.
And Dan Johnson, the superintendent of Johnsburg, has been the leader of that group, and we have a good relationship with John. He's a fellow Iowa alum, or Dan, and so we stay connected, and,
okay,
and they know that they can get us on the phone quick.
Good, thank you.
Carlos, you had something?
Is the goal and intent for the new website to be fully translatable?
How do I want to answer that?
There are going to be the little Google Translate tabs that are going to be on each individual page. That's one of the main goals of the website redesign, so we have those installed.
Thank you. Now I have a couple more things maybe when we get to the end, but we got guests here. So.
Come on up.
Nicholas is here.
Okay.
Morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Thank you.
Yep. Speak loud enough because you're on those microphones. And
Oh, right there, yeah.
if somebody is at home watching, they can hear you from right here.
Okay. Good morning, everyone. My name is Nicholas Feda. Thank you for having me. Good to be here.
I'm Joe Gadameller. I'm currently District 3.
John Collins, District 2.
Carlos Acosta, District 5.
Michael Beecher, District 1.
John Young, District 5.
Pamela Altoff, District 4, soon to be District 6, sorry.
Jim Kearns, District 6.
And Kay Bates online.
K-Bay, District 4.
Morning.
If you wouldn't mind, tell us a little bit about yourself and why you chose to apply for this spot.
Sure, absolutely. So I am a assistant public defender in Kane County. I live with my wife and 2 kids in Cary, lovely Cary, Illinois. I applied to this position for various reasons. One, to get involved in my community. 2, without ethics and without ethics in government, I don't think we have trust. I don't think we have. I don't think we have much really. My skill set from work and various other things that I'm involved with, I think is. It fits in line with the Ethics Commission, taking facts, applying them to the law objectively. Not only in my profession as an attorney, but I volunteer with the Illinois Attorney Registration and Disciplinary Commission. That's the commission that oversees and licenses Illinois attorneys. I'm on the Oversight Review Board, or committee, pardon. That committee, I get finished investigations regarding attorney conduct or misconduct, and I'm asked, what do you think? Was the investigation thorough? Was the outcome what you would do? I comment and I send them back, and based upon what I say, the commission leaves as is or reopens the investigation. So I've been doing these things, like I said, in my job and then in my volunteer time. And I would just like a way to get involved, and I think this is a good opportunity for me, and I hope you see it that way as well.
Questions in the board?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Beechey.
Thank you. May I call you Nicholas?
You can call me Nick, Nicholas.
Nicholas. Nicholas, since you'll be working with a group of other individuals from the county reviewing ethical questions for elected officials, would you tell me, or the committee also, your working relationship with teams? Because as an attorney, there may be a slanted towards the legal part. I'm thinking of more the dynamics of a team.
Sure, absolutely. So, number one, the office that I work at now is very team orientated, and that's the legal part that you mentioned, but it's a collaborative process. When you have a case, I routinely, what do you think? I go down the hall to a colleague, what do you think? And then vice versa. That in regards to the non-legal part, I'm the vice president of the Kane County Bar Association, so we do a lot of non-legal activities that require collaboration, meetings, etc. And I work perfectly with colleagues in that regard as well. I have no problems asking for help, seeking help, getting opinions. I know I don't know everything, so I should ask other people for assistance and rely on them, and they rely on me, and vice versa. We're all in it together.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield.
Mr. Kern?
Hi, Nick.
Morning.
Question about your experience in Kane County.
Yes, sir.
Have you experienced in your legal situation, have you experienced any ethical misconduct, and what types of have you seen?
Have I personally experienced ethical misconduct? I have not. If I have, based upon the level that it rises to, I, for lack of a better term, am a mandated reporter for attorney misconduct. But it has to rise to a certain level or meet a certain threshold, so to speak. I have not witnessed that.
What would that threshold be?
Fraud upon the court, things involving money. I've witnessed bad advice. That doesn't.
Sure.
That you can't tell them that. That's just that's an individual or a subjective determination. But I've heard stories, unfortunately,
Okay.
or fortunately. I mean, unfortunately, in that I've heard the stories, and also unfortunate that I didn't witness them, because if I would have, I would have gone forward.
And my question to everyone's going to be: have you written any letters to the editor?
Letters to the editor?
Yeah, in any newspapers.
I think when I was in college, I wrote a letter to an editor about my high school basketball coach and his treatment of a player. There was kind of a big hoopla at the high school that I went to, and I wrote an article or a letter to the editor in support of the player.
All right, thank you.
Mr. Collins?
You mentioned when you're, I think things you have to report, I guess the difference between subjective and objective types of claims. With politics and ethics, many things can be subjective versus objective. How do you think you go about differentiating between those two things?
So in the legal profession, it's spelled out, it's written in the rules of professional conduct when you have to report. So I can follow what's written in the rules of professional conduct. So there's no determination in my mind of, well, it doesn't, I just remember what I saw, witnessed, and then read the rule, and if it applies, I do what I have to do. If it doesn't, then I don't have to report.
I guess I mean the political arena, though. What kind of process would you bring to determining that this person who's reporting an ethics complaint about this other person is doing it subjectively versus, how would you in your mind try and reconcile the political piece with what may or may not actually be happening?
I don't think in my mind, the political piece doesn't matter. It's if there's an allegation, all allegations deserve a thorough investigation, and that's what I will give you if selected.
Carl?
Well, kind of to dovetail on John's question. Because again, you see this in Springfield where sometimes ethics commissions will get kind of dragged into a campaign. What would be kind of your first knee-jerk reaction if a complaint is filed, say, on a candidate, either an incumbent or a candidate, 60 days before an election? Where again, there's kind of the smell test of, is this a true complaint or is this being used to grab a headline?
Well, I can't control what somebody does with the, I don't think I can. We, the commission, I don't think we can control what someone may do, an outside person may do with an allegation. All we can do is what we're charged to do, and that is to thoroughly investigate an allegation and go from there. That other stuff, in my opinion, we don't have a role in, nor should we. We're charged to investigate claims of ethical violations to the fullest, and that's what we should be doing, regardless of timing or there's no excuse for that stuff. So we need to parse it out.
Okay, so just so you understand what Mr. Acosta is asking you, there's actually a process at the Ethics Commission to try to avoid falling into being the headline instead of actually finding ethical issues. Just like if you're in the courthouse and court system, you get a chance for either the grand jury or somebody decides to indict you. There's some opportunity someplace to determine whether the charges make sense. And in fact, the Ethics Commission is supposed to do that before these things get publicized by the Ethics Commission. Before you call a hearing, there's some discussion about should there be a hearing at all. Is this just a political fight? And it's near and dear to my heart because I can tell you that the only time I've ever been in front of the Ethics Commission was somebody that was absolutely a political fight. It had nothing to do with ethics. And so that's what one of the things we're worried about you doing. I'm worried about you or any commission member doing is being used as a tool by the political opposition.
No,
that's the fear.
No, I understand that there, and I'm not that familiar with the process, so excuse me, but yeah, if there's so I think that your question is, would I sign off on a full-blown hearing when the facts may not dictate that? No, the facts are the facts. It doesn't matter to me who brought a complaint, who the respondent is, and or the timing. That doesn't matter. Because then otherwise it breaks down the process. When you start getting, in my opinion, when you start having various exceptions to rules, it just erodes so the process is the process, and if the facts of the allegation don't warrant a hearing, it doesn't matter who brought the complaint and who's the receiver of the complaint. The facts don't warrant a hearing.
Any other things you'd like to tell us? Do you have any other questions? Okay, so for full disclosure, you should know that there are 5 people applied for one position. When we're finished this morning, we'll have a recommendation for the full board from one of those 5 to go forward. The full board meets 2 weeks from yesterday. We'll make the final decision.
Excellent. Thank you all for your time. And like I said when I started, I'm just trying to get involved in my community, my government. So if there's anything else anyone needs, or hey, we think Nick would fit good, please reach out to me. I'm more than happy to serve. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
How long's your right?
Okay. Good morning, Helen.
Good morning.
I'm Joe Gottemauer. I'm the chairman of the committee today, and I am a member of the county board from District 3.
My name is John Collins, I'm District 2.
Carlos Costa, District 5.
Michael Vichuk, District 1.
John Young, District 5.
Good morning, Helen. Pam Altuff, District 4.
Jim Kearns, District 6.
And Kay Bates is outlined, District 4. If you don't mind telling us a little bit about yourself and why you chose to apply for this position, that would be great. That's where we like to start.
Okay, I'm a longtime resident of the county, since '78. I've served as a trustee of the village of Lake in the Hills for 5 years. Was at the McHenry County College I was a coordinator of adult recruitment, and also taught philosophy, especially ethics and introduction to philosophy for about 10 years. I'm a mom. I got 6 kids naturally and 5 more through love, so I have 11 now. I'm grandma too, and a great-grandma. What else? Now I'm just a sub for District 155. I come in when I want to, and that's kind of a nice thing. Love the kids. I've been interested in the field of philosophy, especially ethics, for a long time. I live in a what I consider an ethical world, in the sense of I know that I'm accountable for what I do and what I don't do. But there are, I'm trying to find out a little bit more about what this Ethics Commission does. It's kind of difficult, but I can make some surmises. You know, there are ethics concerns anytime we think of something as wrong, right, or wrong. So if I disclose a secret that my sister told me, that's certainly a breach of ethics. If I decide to go, but ethics and law mingle as well. And if I decide to go 28 miles in a 25-mile zone, there's that sort of overlap. I might know that the particular municipality doesn't give a ticket until 28 or 29. But there's a slight bit of ethics involved in do I exceed the speed limit there, or maybe a large one, depending on how far I'm going to exceed the speed limit. So there's a lot of, in any situation where one is accountable, that is the idea of, that's where the ethics comes in. I do not believe that that's where this commission is at all, but it probably is more in the realm of what I had to college, and have, so in areas where you have either you take on a role, or you take on a job, or a political position, you have then again another layer, which may or may not be outside of that considered right or wrong. But for instance, at the college, we received a training about the use of the computer, and so we all understood computers to be used for business, for the college, not to pass around jokes, not to look at my own research and such. So that's a different layer of ethical concern that an ordinary person wouldn't have. I believe that's the issue of where this commission, that's all I can gather, is where that extra layer of, if you have a, either you're appointed or you're elected to a position where you're taking on a job, you have a certain, they're divulging the secret of a company. If I were in a company that was manufacturing something, that's a lot more serious, well, could be a lot more serious than telling my sister's secret. So ethics and law don't always go together, because like if I spit on the sidewalk here, you might think I'm gross, but in Singapore I'd probably go to jail. And law sometimes doesn't even listen to you when you say you didn't understand. Like, I don't know about that lady, the basketball player in Russia. Did she really know that she was breaking their law when she brought in her supply of narcotics? Our laws here are more lax on that, so I don't know. I can't think of her mind. But if I told an officer that I didn't see the stop sign because it was covered by a branch, a tree branch, or just didn't see it, doesn't matter, I still get the ticket. So law sometimes says whether you knew or you didn't know, you're still culpable. But then again, I knew as a trustee, when I gave my statement of economic interest, that was something I had to do. But then where the ethics would come in is that I answered honestly or not. So, anyway.
Any board questions?
Issue.
Mr. Collins?
Do you view ethics and morality as the same thing, or should be treated differently when it comes to the political arena?
I believe everyone's under his or her own personal ethics, always. But then when you're in the public, you're accountable for different things because of your position. So it's the same but different according to your responsibility. As a parent, I have more ethical responsibilities than my kids do. If they don't have to feed me, I have to feed them. So it's a different thing in your position, and sometimes it's by law, and sometimes it's by my own agreement in taking the job or the responsibility.
Do we have something that you want to share with the?
Well, I'll go on that, but I have questions if
Go right ahead.
He was bringing me to the site so I could look at the application.
So, you've pretty much been here a long time in McHenry County.
Mm-hmm.
You've seen all the politics and Lincoln Hills politics.
Yes.
Well, what anything in Lincoln Hills by any of their people you dealt with down there? Did you see any ethics violations that you would consider a violation down there?
Yeah.
Okay. And in those violations, was there ever anything done or reported on those, or just in your opinion they were violations?
I don't have knowledge of all things that went on, but
Okay.
in the instance that first comes to my mind, nothing was
Okay. I guess I'm not asking you to share that instance
No,
in
I-
case
I'm-
of that, but have you ever written any letters to the editor?
I'm sorry.
Have you ever written any letters to the editor? I'm asking that question to everyone.
I think I wrote one once.
Okay, and what was in the nature, not sharing it, was it anything political?
You know what, it's been, if I did one, it's been a really long time ago, and I cannot tell you, I honestly cannot tell
Okay.
you what it was about.
No, I appreciate that. Okay, I don't
Could
know.
have, but I don't remember.
Sure.
Mr. Vijay?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Helen, if you don't mind, I'll call you Helen.
It's okay.
In regards to that, you will not be the only one on the Ethics Commission. You'll be working with a group of other people. Could you describe your working relationship with groups such as an ethics commission or small groups that would be designed?
For a specific topic.
Just generally your style of working with other people.
I've been a member of, we have Lake Hills Women's League, and I was a member of that until it dissolved, and I also served as president. So I've moved in and out of authority. And I was a soccer coach, and then I became president of the soccer association, back in Lake Hills. And then somebody else took over, so, and now next year I'm going to be a Rotary president, but I've been a Rotary person for a while. So I've been both leader and supporter. So I joined the things because I enjoy working with people.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield.
Any other questions from the board members? For full disclosure, you are one of 5 people applying for one position, so sadly 4 people will not get the recommendation. We will decide that after we finish interviews today that we will make a recommendation to the full board. The full board will decide this 2 weeks from yesterday. Do you have any other questions you have of us beforehand?
No?
Well, thank you for applying, and we will get on to the next one. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Kray has had car troubles and is online and would like to be online as an interview. I guess you guys can see him over behind me. Mr. Kray, would you, well, I'm Joe Gadamoller. I am the chairman of this committee, and I'm from District 4. Well, District 3 now. I'll be District 4 in about 8 weeks if all goes well. Go ahead.
John Collins, District 2.
Carlos Acosta, District 5.
Michael Vija, District 1.
John Young, District 5.
Pamela Altoff, District 4.
Jim Kearns, District 6.
If you don't mind telling us a little about yourself and why you applied for this job, that would be a good place to start.
Okay. First off, good morning, everybody. Thank you for allowing me to do this via the computer since my car unexpectedly had a problem. I am currently retired. Are you hearing my audio okay?
Yep, yes we are actually. It's fine.
Okay, good. I'm currently retired. I've been retired for 3 years. My last position was with the American Bar Association, where I was the Associate Director of Business and Educational Development. In that position, I was mainly responsible when I retired, putting on about 400 live webcasts for continuing legal education. I had a staff of 4, but was also had indirect responsibility for about 22 others. Previous to the American Bar Association, I had my own firm doing media development for a variety of things. With one of my biggest clients was J.J. Keller Associates in Neenah, Wisconsin, where I produced about 22 food safety programs for them, some of their highest revenue generating programs that they've had. And previous to that, I was with Granger, W.W. Granger Incorporated, where I was a visual communications manager, or marketing communications manager, actually. That's how they updated it. I've had a wide range of experience with a number of things. I have a bachelor's degree in animation filmmaking and a master's in business administration. Are there any specific questions you would like to ask me?
We will get to those. We'd just like to let you give the first opportunity. Board? Mr. Vijay?
One of the reasons I decided to apply for this position is because now being retired, I've always tried to do some charity work or things of that nature, and I would like to have the opportunity to be useful in the community and participate. When I seen the ethics position show up, I thought that I would like to do that. It seems to be something that it's worthwhile. And I would really like the opportunity to participate.
Thank you. Mr. Vicek?
Thank you. Dennis, if you don't mind, I'll call you by your first name. Dennis,
That's fine.
tell me your style of working with other people in small groups.
I would consider my style collaborative. I like to get input from everybody before making a decision. It not only is worthwhile by making other people feel involved in the process, but also not everyone has all the answers. So it's good to get input from everyone.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield.
Other board questions?
Joe?
Jim Kearns?
I was just going to ask Dennis, that you've applied for this position before, haven't you?
Yes, I did.
Thank you.
Mr. Kearns?
Just a question I've asked everyone. Have you written any letters to the editors of any newspapers?
No, I have not.
Okay, thank you.
Am I missing anybody else? Well, for full disclosure, you're, again, one of 5 people that have applied. We're going to make a recommendation. This committee makes a recommendation to the full board. The full board will vote on it 2 weeks from yesterday at their regular meeting. And you're welcome to stay online if you want to watch the next interview and the debate, or you're welcome to check in later. You'll hear it. It's up to you. All right?
One thing I would do is, if you would like, I was reading resumes of my past work and experience and groups. I will forward that Katie Bow via email since I can't be there in person.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
And we appreciate your application. It takes a lot to stick your neck out for these sometimes, so I appreciate that help.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Is Mr. Purvin here?
He is not.
Okay.
Yeah, we're a little ahead of his time.
Huh?
We're a minute or two ahead of his time.
Yeah, we had a schedule, but I'd say, do you guys want to take one of the budget reviews and come back and see if because we are about a minute ahead of schedule. I would hate to not give somebody an opportunity who is a minute early.
This is just to make major communications.
Well, GIS is sitting right there. Come on up.
Oh.
Go ahead.
Good morning.
Morning.
My name is Nicole Gattuso. I'm the Director of GIS. And I'll go ahead and get started with the highlights and goals of the GIS department. We started the year, we created the final voter precinct boundaries, which were approved by the county board. After that, we worked with the county clerk and their vendor to get all of the registered voters assigned to the correct precincts. We also completed the 2021 aerial imagery, which is available on all the interactive maps online and to the county departments and the public. And we did an RFP this year for 2022 imagery and LiDAR, which allows us to get topography of the county updated. This year for parcel updates, we had a lot of changes. We had 20 new subdivisions come through the county, which created 665 parcels. We had 20 annexations. We worked with our ETSB this year and EMA to create a dashboard of certain police and fire calls, so EMA can see what is going on as those calls come in. And if they get calls too, the dashboard allows them to enter that information. We also worked with the Spring Grove Fire. We created a map book that they have in all of their fire trucks that gives a detailed view of all the addresses, so they don't rely just on technology. They have a physical book in their truck as well. We worked with the Regional Office of Education to get an updated map of their boundary. We also worked with the Woodstock Library on their rural area, created a map. We worked with the Workforce Network for mapping out all the industrial locations. In animal control, we mapped out all their incidents of animal bites. And then we continue to work with the health department for updating the COVID-19 dashboard every day. So those are some of the highlights we've been accomplished. For next year, we will complete our 2022 aerial and LiDAR data. We're going to assist planning and development with going out into the field to collect information for permits, or right now, we're still working with DevNet, but we can use GIS technology, so when they're out in the field, they can collect information and report that back that will integrate with DevNet. We will continue to update all of our parcel-based data with the assessment department and our county clerk. There's several interactive maps that we support. Throughout the year, we get requests to modify layers, and so keeping that technology updated. And one of the other big initiatives we plan to do, and we've started communications, is working with our county coordinator on creating a GIS consortium amongst the municipalities. Right now we have discussions with Woodstock and Winter Lake to look at like a pilot project of it, where see how we can integrate better with them, and then use that as a model of working with all communities. So I've been very thankful for Sheila. She's been helping put that together, and we're assisting with the technical side of it.
Winter Lake kind of works well because that's so much construction going on and so many new utilities to identify it, and a professional village administrator who wants Nicole and Shaylin's help. So it's working well.
So just a question. So pardon my ignorance. So do cities or towns usually have their own GIS teams, or do they contract that out? What do they?
It's a mixture. In McHenry County, most all have contracted that out.
Okay.
Winter Lake really has nothing, and Woodstock has contracted it out, but over time it's just remained like out of date. So they have some GIS, but it's from years prior, and other consultants have helped them, but they have some data that is just sitting on a hard drive. So we're going to help them get that data up to date, because a lot of the county maintains, we maintain all the parcel data, and we have a lot of information, and if they have it, we could come together.
Another question, would this be a service or part of the consortium that they would contribute to financially as well to help offset?
We're still exploring it. We haven't gotten that far, but there's a mutual need to get information back and forth. Like for instance, the county, most of our data references back to address information, and most of the addresses are within the municipalities. That would be a great data set if they could provide to us. And likewise, we map out all the parcels as they get recorded. We could provide that to them. So we're looking at ways that we can, improve the efficiency within our agencies.
Okay.
Mr. Vijay?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Under your 2023 goals, you're completing the 2022 area LIDAR flight information. That information will last for about 5 years, is that correct?
For the LiDAR, the USGS recommends that it gets updated every 5 to 8 years.
Okay.
Yeah.
Given that being the case, then I noticed that when we looked at your budget request, we noticed that under contractual services, this is on page 40 of 68, there was a decrease of $500,000.
Right.
I assume that was the
Exactly.
program. Okay. So for the general public that would be watching this, the fund balance enhancement of $87,000, is that money that's going to be set aside for the future need of that? I just want to make sure that the
Yes.
general public understands that.
Oh, that's a great question. Yes, we have to budget out for the future. So
Right.
we put more into our budget, the fund balance enhancement to do those projects later.
Okay.
They're not annual.
Yeah, I just want to make sure that the public understands that we're doing a due diligence by setting money aside so for the future purchase.
Yes,
Thank you.
absolutely.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll yield back.
Nicole, can you remind me and the committee, when we did your budget, we talked about your GIS fee. And this committee helped us increase that fee 3 years ago or so?
In 2019, the committee voted to increase the fee, which began December 1st of 2019. And we did a fee study, and the fee study said that it should be increased to $27 and some change, so roughly $28. We increased it to $24. We didn't go all the way and we were going to keep an eye on how the funding was doing. Well, in 2020, the interest had gone down so low that a lot of people were refinancing, and a lot of the housing was doing well. So the $24 was sufficient, and along with 2021, but now in 2022, the interest rates have changed. Not too many people, less people are going to refinance, and so it's something we have to keep our eyes on as we move forward, is how, because the funds were set, given if we're going to do LiDAR and aerials and keep up with those items, the fee should be around the $27, but we held off on going all the way there.
Thank you, and that's just something we had talked about probably wanting to revisit in the springtime, soon we're going. Every bit of Nicole's operation is paid for with that fee, so.
Questions from the board? Mr. Acosta?
I don't have a question, I'll be the first to say, I love the idea of the GIS consortium. I think that the county's GIS department has a lot of information that municipalities can use, but I don't know why they don't tap into it and haven't tapped into it while I've been on the board. So I'm excited that the county took that initiative, and hopefully the municipalities will respond. I've talked to you, Nicole, I've always been a big, sounds weird, I've been a big fan of the crime map that the county and the sheriff put together. I think that information could be just as valuable to municipalities. And I thought I read somewhere that there are a couple of municipalities that are now doing crime mapping. I've tried to get statistics from some municipalities, and what I get is dozens and dozens of spreadsheets of statistics, and I'm a visual person. So if that crime mapping could somehow be expanded into the municipalities, I think it would be a valuable piece of information, not just for the police, but for the community. So So again, I'm excited that we're trying this consortium, and I really hope the municipalities buy into it.
Other board members? Well, I would chime in with what Mr. Costa had to say. I probably am on Athena once or twice a day. It answers thousands of questions that, and I'm old enough sadly to remember what I used to have to pay $100 to get an aerial photograph. You know, keep up the good work, and I'm quite happy that there is another system available. Any other matters for the GIS department? Anything from you, Kay?
None.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
The last interview is on his way down the hall right now.
Okay.
Sure.
Yes.
As a process question, can I go on the assumption that after we hear the budget reviews for all of the 6 that are reported on our agenda, then we'll agree to put forward or not put forward?
Sure, we can certainly do that. I just knew this gentleman was on the way down the hallway, and wanted to go back, and we'll come back to all the budget items and put them back in order.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Give us 1 minute, because you've got a gentleman in the restroom. I think that's where I went. We can start on this part at least. I'm Joe Gottemoller. I'm the chairman of this committee. I am in District 3. Carlos, if you want to.
Carlos Acosta, I represent District 5.
I'm Michael Vijuk. I represent District 1.
John Young, District 5.
Good morning, Pamela Altoff, District 4.
Jim Kearns, District 6.
Okay.
Kay Bates, District 4.
And John Collins, who will be back in a minute, is District 2. If you want to go ahead and tell us a little bit about yourself, and John's on his way and he's about to open the door.
Okay.
Go ahead, tell us a little bit about yourself and why you decided to apply for this job.
My name is Andy Purvin. I live in Algonquin, and I have been a safety director and OSHA facilitator for approximately 22 years. I work in plastics manufacturing, and I've done that for the last roughly 10 years. I actually have applied before to be on the board, but they ended up going in a different direction. So when the opening happened, I was still interested in participating. I have a strong public service and background. I was on the board of the synagogue in Crystal Lake for the past 8 years and been the president of the board for the last 4. And at work, I'm one of the public faces. I work with human resources and various issues that come up. I participate in, again, the facilitating of conflict resolution. And I'm looking to work with McHenry County. I've been here for the past 10 years, both in Crystal Lake and now Algonquin. That's about it.
Okay. Questions from the board members? Mr. Vijuk.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Andrew, if you don't mind me calling you. Andrew, tell me your style of working with small groups, which would be obviously the ethics committee is in a large group.
Well, I'm a team player in whatever I end up working with. I'm more interested in, again, resolution of problems. So whether that's a small committee that we have at work with, 3, 4, 5 people, or larger groups, that's generally where most decisions are made, in the smaller groups. So that's generally where I participate. The boards that I've worked on have generally been in the 6, 7, 8 people category.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield.
Mr. Collins.
John Collins, District 2. Apologize. In conflict resolution, there's typically give and take to try and come to a mutually agreeable decision that makes sense for both parties. In an ethics commission, that may not be the case, or probably not be the case. I mean, if there's an ethics complaint filed, and the investigation shows somebody did something wrong, then wrong is wrong. Do you feel like you can kind of separate the desire to resolve a conflict versus coming down on one side and saying, you're wrong and that's it?
Well, I do a lot of investigations in regards to safety and human resources issues, so generally there is someone at fault. I still consider that resolution, even if it's ending resolution or any category, but it generally is a one way or the other. But again, I still consider that resolution.
Anyone else? Oh, I'm sorry, Carlos.
Oh, yes, sir.
There's always a concern that an ethics commission will be utilized and get dragged into a campaign season. We see it in Springfield all the time. So I guess I'm curious, what would be kind of your initial gut reaction, response, course of action, say if an ethics complaint is filed against a candidate, say 60 days before the election, what would kind of be your initial thought process?
Well, again, I still believe that there is an investigation that needs to move forward to come to a decision, and I'm more interested in that process than necessarily the timing or the side issues, the peripheral. I'm more interested in getting to the bottom of the problem.
Mr. Kearns?
In your questions, you were Illinois governors appointed to Illinois Ride and Amusement Park Safety Board.
I'm actually still on it.
You're still on that?
Yes, sir.
Is that really active? Is that really active?
Yeah. I was looking, and this was probably a year ago, but I was looking for, again, some way on the public service side, because it's a not paid position, but I have a very specific set of skills, and working in an amusement park years ago as a paramedic, and then now working in the safety field seemed to be a nice fit. So I applied and they accepted me and I was appointed by the governor.
Sure. Okay, and then I have asked this to everyone. Have you written any letters to the editors in the newspapers?
I have not.
Okay, thank you. That's all I had.
Any other questions? Right, to bring things full disclosure, you're one of 5 people that have applied for one position. We're going to discuss who we recommend as this committee's recommendation, candidly, right after we finish your interview. That recommendation goes to the full board. The full board will decide on that recommendation, yes or no, 2 weeks from yesterday, actually, is the next board meeting. Do you have anything else you'd like to tell us before we move on to the next step?
I don't think so. I will tell you that in a group, I'm generally very participatory. I'm not someone that sits on the sideline. So if there's work to be done, I generally roll up my sleeves and get it done because I'm, again, we're interested in moving processes forward. So.
Well, thank you. Thanks for applying. And I appreciate you taking the time to come up here and sit down and get a chance to meet us. And at the same time, I mean, it is an important job, and I know we all appreciate when we have, I mean, there were times years ago we get one candidate for something. It's much nicer to sit here with 4 or 5 people that are qualified and be able to go, okay, who's the best that we've seen here? So I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you all.
And that brings us to the next part of the job. I know in the past we've talked about getting 2 or 3 different people on the list. Does anybody have us, who wants to make a recommendation first? Mr. Salto.
I'll just note that I went back and looked, and Nicholas, is it Feda, was one of our top people last time.
Okay.
And so, I mean, that's an individual I think that we need to look at closely, as he was in, again, that category last time we did this.
Okay.
And I also thought he interviewed very, very well.
Mr. Kearns.
I would concur on that with Nicholas. I liked his interview, and I think he would be very impartial. And if nobody else has anyone else they'd like to bring forward, I would move to nominate him.
Let me go around the room first
Go
and
ahead.
give everybody a chance
agree.
to weigh in before we rule somebody in or out. Go ahead, Mr. Collins.
I thought all the candidates that came in today are excellent candidates. And I think that any one of the 5 would do a really good job on the commission itself. They all bring something different, which I think makes this a little bit challenging. I agree that Mr. Feda did a great job. I think with his legal background, it served well. I'm more partial to Mr. Purvin, the last gentleman we spoke to. I think that he brings a lot, potentially brings a lot to the table, and just how he presented himself and how he answered the questions. I think he'd make a fine choice for the commission itself.
Mr. Costa?
Actually, I had a question for Peter, or whoever can answer this question. Do we currently have anyone on the Ethics Commission with a legal background?
I do not believe we do. Let me just go through.
That's a great question.
No disrespect to lawyers, but I don't want a room full of lawyers.
I do
Sure.
not.
Come on, Bert.
But that's a great question.
It's a good question.
Okay, so just to verify, at this point, we do not.
But yeah, I do not believe we do, but there's one that I was going to confirm. None of them stand out.
Go ahead.
I mean, working in that profession.
Can I also ask too, when's the last time the Ethics Commission met?
June?
And how many times do they typically meet in a year?
Usually they meet about 3 times a year.
Thank you.
And that's unless there's a cause to meet, which is a...
Right, right.
More comments?
Well, I would say, I mean, honestly, I'd probably lean towards either Mr. Feda or Mr. Kray.
Mr. Vicek?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I agree with Mr. Collins that the quality of the applicants were superb for this round. It would be a very difficult decision in looking at their background and the submission of their application and then listening to the individuals. I tend to look at, and I agree with Mr. Kearns about Mr. Feda. I think he brings an interesting perspective to the commission. Ms. Jost was quickly someone that I also considered in the process. but not to discount the other 3 individuals who interviewed. It would be a very close decision-making process. I think the county would be served well by any of these applicants. In doing so, I think that as I took my notes here, I think they all seem to be willing to put forth a great deal of effort to be on the commission, and I think they also have a solid understanding of small group dynamics that I thought was important. That's why I kept pressing that question. Thank you.
Ms. Bates?
Yes, thank you. I lean towards Veda, Mr. Veda, but I just have a comment to make, about Mr. Purvin. The only thing that concerned me when I reviewed his application was I found him to be, and also during the interview, to be a strong black and white type of a person, and I could go wrong here, but sometimes, with ethics, it's very situational, and I'm just a little concerned about. Thank you.
Thank you, Kay. Where I'm at this point in time is I actually liked our first guy, Mr. Haak. I do agree with what several of you have said, that I don't think there's a bad choice on this list. I actually, this is a good group. If we'd started out, and I know last month I tried to narrow it down, this is a great group of 5 people. If we had more spots, I can live with any one that you guys put forward. But that's, I will go from there. And I'm interested to hear. Yeah. Where do you guys want to go? Mr. Kearns?
Well, and I do appreciate that we got to personally hear from all 5 of the candidates, and that we took that time, because it really, last month, it wasn't my first choice, the way I'm leaning here. So, before hearing from them. But I would move that we approve Nicholas Feda.
Is there a second to that motion?
I'll second it.
Seconded by Pam. Discussion on this, it's your guys' call. Anybody have a strong feeling one way or the other that we haven't already expressed it? In that case, I'll call roll. Mr. Kearns?
Yes.
Ms. Altoff?
Yes.
Mr. Young?
Yes.
Mr. Vicek?
Yes.
Mr. Acosta?
Yes.
Mr. Collins?
No.
And Ms. Bates?
Yes.
Okay, and I'll vote yes, so it'll go 6-1.
And that was for Mr. Feda, correct? I'm sorry,
Huh?
there was a sneeze in the
That was for
background.
Mr. Fed.
Thank you.
Is that 6-1 or 7-1?
7-1, I'm sorry. I keep thinking of a 7-number board.
Mr. Chairman, I just want to confirm in response to the question, there are no attorneys currently on the ethics committee.
Thank you.
Thank you all for your help, and we'll go from there. That recommendation, as we know, will go to the next board meeting. We'll talk about it at that board meeting. That was not mine this time. Okay. GS we talked about, brings us to benefits and human resources.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
So the HR office operates under 2 budgets. That's why you see there's the HR budget, which is general fund, and then a lot of our work is done with benefits, so we have the benefit fund. So we have both of those submitted to you this morning. Under the human resources, again, the general fund work that we do, we're happy to say that Kronos is at 98%. We're still building that last pre-boarding component, and we hope that that's going to be kicked off in the next week or so. We're in the testing phase, and it's really pretty slick. So we're very happy with that, and we're ready to push that out to the public. There was a lot of work done on Kronos this last year. Even though we kicked it off live last year for payroll in July, the 4 major HR components were put on after that. So there was a lot of Kronos work that we did. One of the things that I did this year was I restructured the HR office. We realized that in this environment that we really need to put more emphasis on recruiting, and with the heavy load of recruiting, I needed an assistant to support me in the recruiting process and some of the other processes that I was working on. So Suzanne was promoted from a benefits person, the benefits coordinator, to the assistant HR director, and thank you for that. That has paid off wonderfully. She's now going through a lot of union negotiation training, and she'll be able to support me in that process. We also specialize somebody in recruitment, and because benefits, there's so much opportunity in benefits to save money, earn money, we also focus somebody in that area also. I think those were very good moves that we did this year. We did the 2022 compensation study. So that was started in January. In June, you approved that process as we presented it, and it was applied in July. That was a lot of work, and it's done. There's still a few people who will get a little bit of an increase next year because they were capped. We capped increases to 10,000 this year, but because of some reclassifications, there are a handful of people who will get some increase to their wages beyond merit next year. We waited 5 years to do that comp study because that was kind of our process in the past, was to do a comp study every 5 years. We've learned that waiting 5 years was too long. 5 years was too long, and we had fallen below the market, and then we had a big increase to get back up to the market. We now have it in the county board goals to do it every 2 years. So we will not be budgeting for a comp study next year, but there will be one in 2024. We will be doing that again to make it more regular. Yes?
I'm sorry. I might have a couple seconds to catch up. The increases that people are going to get next year because of the cap, are they aware of that increase?
It is dependent on the department director's, it's the department director's decision.
Why is that?
It's not a given.
It's not a given, and because they
Not the
received,
merit part, though.
right.
The cap part.
Part of the caution that we had before, and we kind of were looser at this time, is IMRF, when you do more than a 6% increase in a year, there's potential if they retire that we get a fine.
Oh, okay.
That we have to pay an accelerated amount for that person. We really didn't follow that so much this time because we brought people up to the midpoint, because that's the market mid. That's not necessarily the middle of like the 10-year or the years. It's where the most people in the market are at. And so we got them to that point. We then said it's the department to determine, should they be further up on that scale? Do they merit that? If they had been on the regular scale, would they have gone there? So we didn't just say they automatically get to go there. We left that up to the departments to determine equity within the department, their performance. I didn't want us to make the decision that they should just all go there. The departments, I felt, knew better where that person should be. So there's a limit they could go.
Okay.
So.
It's a fairly small number of individuals, but there is, 25 different stories with each of these.
Yes, everyone has a different story.
Okay. And you don't think that's going to impact those people leaving or staying? That they don't know? I mean, everybody knows the compensation study was done. Everybody knows that adjustments were made.
I think it's
I'm
part
assuming
of-
everybody knows it was a cap of 10,000.
John, I think that's part of 25 different stories. I mean, those
Okay.
managers know the likelihood of somebody leaving in many instances, and, you know, so, yeah.
Okay.
And what the performance has been, and this still kind of, so it's kind of almost like a merit opportunity in some respects
Okay.
for these. And some of our elected officials are, you know, using some flexibility there.
Salta?
So, building on that, what bad stories or good stories are we gonna hear from, you know, that implementation? I'm assuming most people were pleased, but what's the downside? I mean, to John's, are we gonna hear any backlash from a specific division or any of that? Because I understand there's 25 different stories, but is there anything specific we need to be aware of?
Anything specific? There have been rumblings from the comp study, because again, the scale from the beginning to
17th,
the
I
end,
remember.
again, we had gradually brought the bottom up with the path to 15, and we didn't move the top, so when we did the scale, the top came up. So there are some rumblings from people in lower grades as all the increases went to the higher paid people. Well, that's because we didn't adjust the top for the path to 15, and it did go up. And it's the market. Some of these higher skilled positions there's fewer people, they're in higher demand, and if we're gonna get somebody who's qualified for the position, we gotta pay what the market pays. There were some rumblings from people especially who had been here more than 10 years and felt that they should have been moved up to their year on the scale. If the scale is a 30-year scale and I've been here 26 years, I should be here.
We had a meeting, Cheryl and I hosted a meeting in this room on August 25th with 30-some health department employees, and that was probably the biggest, I don't want to say complaint, but question we needed to answer over and over and over again is that if you were already over the midpoint, there was no. The commitment was to get everybody to the midpoint.
Market.
So if
Right.
you're here 22 years and you're over the midpoint, thank you. But you know that's all we're going to do at this point.
And I think, and all I'm doing is asking for that rationalization, so if I receive a phone call from somebody, I can say, this was the thought process, and this is the thought process we supported, right?
Right. We talked
so
about, you know, the ask that we had and the commitment that you know, the $2.1 million, you know, commitment to try and move things. But we were really focusing more on the starting wages and then that ripple effect, but only getting people to the midpoint was all we could do at this point.
And what I try to help people understand is that while it's the mid of our scale, it is the market. That's the market. So we at least wanted to get the market, so they're not, it's, everything above that midpoint is kind of icing, and thank you for being here, and hopefully merit-based.
Got it,
Yeah.
got it. I mean, did you hear, yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So we'll be back doing this again in 2 years, but I think it's gonna be less of a change, because it will be every 2 years instead of every 5 years. One of the things that HR has in the archives are hundreds of boxes of employee files. And what had not happened with those files in many, many years is after 5 years, removing everything but payroll stuff. And after 78, somebody reaches the age of 78, destroying the file. The files were not organized in a way where we could easily say, these 35 people have turned 78, we now can, by state law, put them on the list for destruction. It was a multiple year project. We've gone back to 1990, and we've cleaned out all of those files, and that was a project. So we removed hundreds of boxes from archives, and we created a recording system so we know who's turning 78 and which files can be destroyed according to the records destruction policies. That was a big one. And again, all new employees that have come in since 2021 are all electronic. So they have electronic files, and then our goal is to have all of the current paper files of active employees made electronic also. So we're working on that. This year, 5 union negotiations, 5 out of 10. Animal control, we haven't started yet. DOT, we're close. Facilities, we'll start as soon as DOT is done. Circuit clerk, we're going to get started on that soon. And FOP3, we're proposing that we do a 1-year extension based on the economy, and not sure where we want to go with that contract. So that's kind of where we're going with the HR side. Our goals for next year, again, we really want to boost our recruitment efforts. We typically have recruited off of our website, but we're now, you'll see there's a little extra money in our budget. We need to get out there on other pages for recruiting. We've got to expand our recruitment efforts.
What's our relationship with the college for recruitment of people?
They're on our list, so they get our postings. Again, especially if there's certain positions where they have those kinds of graduates. We have multiple universities and schools that we tap into and use them for recruitment efforts. Do you know any more, Suzanne, how much we do with MCC?
I think that, I mean, there's, you know, positions that we're looking at that we could recruit as a college student, we post on their board.
I mean, I guess my question would be, was we're having difficulty, right, in some instances. Is there any outreach specifically to the college indicating that, you know, this is an area that we'd like them to kind of assist us with? So that there's been a dialogue between us and the colleges that we use? Instead of just a posting?
Yeah. We haven't yet. I know that Valley High, I believe Valley High, they have a CNA program out at MCC, so
Right.
Valley High is very tied into the CNA class graduates out of there.
And I know that we're kind of tied into the law enforcement at DeKalb too. I'm just wondering if there is and you guys do your job great. I'm not in any way suggesting that, you know, but again, sometimes, you know, that personal touch of actually reaching out and talking to whoever that recruitment person is at those places may assist us a little bit more.
Depending on what the position is, when we work with the department, say it's planning and development, we'll ask them, where do you think the applicants are going to come from, and we target based on what that position is. So again, if it's planning and development, there may be certain associations that they're memberships of, and we get it out in that way. They may be aware of certain programs at different universities or high schools and say we want to go there. So we kind of try and target depending on what the position is.
Then you've answered my question. Thank
Okay.
you. You do that.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Retention, again, the exit interviews and stay interviews. This is something that we've been attempting to do with every employee as they leave the organization, say, why are you leaving, where are you going, what could we have done better, what should we change? Sometimes it's difficult to get them to respond. They're like, I'm out of here, I'm done, or I'm afraid to tell you. So we're trying to increase those number of exit interviews. We're trying to get the departments to give us a heads up as soon as you're aware so we can catch them before they're out the door. Because if you mail them something, the response rate is lower. Stay interviews is something we want to do more of, which is once they're here for 30 days, 60 days, talking to them at 30 days and 60 days and saying, how's it going? Do you feel like you've gotten the training that you've needed? Do you have any concerns at this point? So we want to be sure and identify issues before they decide, I can't do this. So we're adding more of the stay interview process. Employee development, again, I'm working with the departments to try and get them to use the tuition reimbursement, the student loan repayment, to support the development of their staff. If they don't have the training money specifically in their department, we've got this as a backup If somebody wants to get certified, may not be a requirement, but it would benefit the department, let's get them certified if we've got the money there and there's a program available. So I'm gonna do a little bit more of a push in this next year on let's get our people trained. And that's because we hear it in the employee surveys about development. We need to make development real, not just a buzzword. It's gotta be real. We gotta put some meat behind the talk. Next year, I only anticipate 2 union negotiations, SEIU coroner and the county clerk. So those are the only 2. Next year will be a low negotiation year. Maybe we'll have FOP 3 if they just do an extension of 1 year.
That's a really important note, just so I throw that in. We only have 2 negotiations next year, hopefully, or 2.5. You know, some of you know there's a transition in the state's attorney's office, so we're going to be losing Jenna Blake Dixon. Jenna's been a real asset for us in negotiating and with Cheryl. So that's, you know, Cheryl's really good, but it's nice to have an attorney along with you. We're going to have to groom that next attorney. So having a light year is advantageous for us. And that's one thing that fell right this year.
Yep. I have one other goal on the HR side, which really is related to the Merit Commission. Merit Commission is reviewed by Law and Government, but I don't have goals there because it's testing for new recruits for the Sheriff's Department. So I included under the HR goals. And we'll be doing 1 promotion test and 2 new recruitment tests for the Merit Commission next year to recruit, again, new deputies. Any questions on the HR side of our operations? Yes.
I know it's too early since the midpoint was all discussed and we approved that. How many positions are we actively recruiting right now in the countywide?
Oh, I think we have like 40-some positions posted. Well, yeah, about 40-some positions.
Are those at like the professional level or entry level?
It's the whole range. So it's custodians, CNAs, food service, all the way up to engineers,
attorneys, highway maintenance, circuit clerks.
It's the whole
health department.
Oh, that's so bad out of 1,500.
Yeah, percentage-wise, but still.
The shortage of qualified candidates is across the board. It's across the board.
And everywhere.
And everywhere,
Yeah.
not just McHenry County, it's a national thing.
Well, it was interesting, Joan made the comment at the transportation meeting, we were talking afterwards, that for the engineers, one of the problem is, you know, when the Great Recession happened, a lot of people dropped out of those fields because their jobs weren't there, and they got into other things, and they've never come back to it. So you have these people that would have had 5, 6, 7 years of experience or more, gone out of the market.
It's a very interesting time. It's tough. It's tough to get good people.
I have to admit, do you have any clue as to when that's going to give, if ever? I mean, because I see it in the private practice. I mean, finding somebody to do any job is just nearly impossible.
And keeping them.
So I would say
keeping
probably
them once you get
15 years ago, I started going to conferences and they talked about, you know, the baby boomers. There's going to be this issue that's going to happen when all the baby boomers start to retire. Yeah, until the baby boomers are done, I think we're going to continue to see more leaving and less. So I think that plays into it. The economy, hopefully that kind of balances out. But again, I think the demand to work at home, to work from home is going to remain. I think the new generation of workers realize that if they can work from home, they should be able to work from home. And if you're not going to let me do it, I'm going to go do it for somebody else who will let me work from home.
That's going to ebb and flow, though, too. A lot of people are discovering it's not as good as they thought it was going to be in a long-term basis, right?
Yeah.
Go ahead, John.
An additional question. This phenomenon with the reporting on quiet quitting, are we seeing any of that?
Quiet quitting? I'm not sure what that is.
It's where people are basically just doing exactly what their job description is. They're not willing to do anything outside of that box. So where before you go, hey, could you help me with this project? people are now saying, no, that's not my job description. They're just, so what's happening is it's forcing companies to potentially hire additional people, because what they relied on in the past is people doing those additional tasks. They're calling it quiet quitting.
I've not heard that term before, but what I've seen kind of playing out here is as our staffing, as we contracted it, and people had to start picking up more work, and we had to reclassify those positions, we had to reclassify those positions. So it wasn't just, I'm gonna work here, but I'm gonna do this work and this work and this work. I'm gonna get reclassified to another position. When we had that meeting with the health department, that was one of the things we heard, is that a lot of the lower level administrative people were actually picking up more work than what was in their description, but they felt that they had been picking up more, but they weren't getting paid and classified in that way. So we told them that, well, we need to hear that from your supervisor, and you're to bring that up through your department, and let's look at your position. So there are people saying, I'm not getting paid for that. I need to be reclassified. I need to be
Yeah, so what's happening is when those conversations are happening, people are just saying, I'm not going to do that anymore. And they call it quiet quitting because they're still working for you, but they quit all these additional
I think ours might be quiet expansion. I don't think people were quitting. I don't think we've had
Well, they don't
many
physically
people say,
quit.
I'm not going to do it. I think they've just been taking on more. And some departments were advocated much quicker for that person to say, we need to get them classified properly because I've given them much more. And some, again, health department overloaded by COVID, hasn't caught up with that yet, and I think that they're going to need to come forward and probably reclassify some of their positions. People who have taken on more, but they haven't had the luxury to work on that yet. Benefits, again, we brought in a new wellness program last year, and we had 319 people participate. Yay. That was a really good turnout. We were very happy with the brand new program. One of the incentives that you allowed us to do last year is for those who participated and were on our health insurance to give them a $25 a month decrease on their premium. So that was about $300 decrease of premium that they had to pay. People liked that, but what we heard in the employee survey is because you pay twice a month, it's $12.50 here, $12.50 here, that they hardly noticed it. And what we heard at a wellness committee meeting, we had a speaker come in from the Northwestern, and the wellness committee, which is made up of employees from different departments, they said, how do we increase participation? What have you seen work? And they said, we have seen a huge increase of participants when the employers, instead of offering 300 splattered across the year, to do a big bump right up in the front, and you go back to your department and say, look, I got a $300 Visa gift card, and they're like, I want to do that. So it greatly increased the participation in the program. So what we're looking at doing this year is doing that instead, is giving them the 300 up front, do the testing just in November or December, January, one time instead of doing it throughout the year. They get the 300, and because we do it that way, at 6 months, every one of those participants can go back and get reevaluated by Northwestern. So it does have a follow-up component to it that our current program doesn't, and I believe, based on what we've heard happen in other communities, it will increase our participation. The number of people who participate in the wellness program, again, IPBC says the more people you get doing wellness, the better your employees' health is, that they're aware of things that they may not have been aware of before. We're going to give you $100 for every person who does that to support further wellness programs. So that's the level we're at right now. I would love to see us to get to 50% of our employees, which is about 438. I said 398, but I think it's 438. We would then get $200 back to support more wellness programs. That's one of the reasons that I wanted to put more emphasis on benefits. Again, the healthier, the more wellness program-based programs that we have, the healthier our employees are, the less claims we have, better chance of keeping our health insurance flat. So we're gonna be putting a little more emphasis on the wellness program next year to try and get those numbers up and to get more wellness programs in. And again, paying through those programs through the IPDC, not necessarily through the Employee Benefit Fund. Last year, we reopened the HMO and PPO. We had closed those, trying to get people to get onto the high deductible plan and realize how beneficial it was. We reopened the HMO and PPO. And we didn't see a lot of people flow back into those plans. Those who were on the HSA plan realized that I can do this and I can save money. Building my HSA, the county helps contribute to my HSA. So we did reopen those, we didn't see a lot of flow back. The one thing that we changed last year was, again, we reduced employee contributions. Where they were paying 15% for an HMO, it went down to 10. Where they were paying 20 for employee plus one or family, that went down to 15. That matched the FOP. We had this difference between the FOP and non-union. This was always a big point of contention in negotiations, trying to get them to match non-union. We figured, let's just bring non-union to where the FOP is, and we removed that from the table. Smoothest negotiation ever. It was for both FOP 1 and 2, and the employees appreciated it also. And it was well within budget. It didn't cost us that much. We did introduce a new EAP, one that has a law enforcement focus, because the one we had before really didn't have a specialization of working with deputies or correction officers who deal with different types of stress and issues than the rest of our employees. So we introduced a new EAP. I haven't seen a report from them yet, so I can't report on increased usage yet, but when I get that, I'll share that with you. One of the other things that we added last year, and this is something that had been coming up every year that I've been here, is so you give all this program and you give incentives to people on our insurance, but what about me? I'm on my husband's insurance. I don't cost you a penny. If I was on your insurance, you'd be paying a whole lot. So what are you gonna do for me? So last year was the first year that we did give $1,000 to those who are not on our insurance, and there were, it's anywhere from 98 to 101. So it's about 100 people who get $250 on a quarterly basis for not being on our insurance. We'll see if that number goes up next year, because this was the first year that we did this. Last year was the first year that we did our open enrollment totally electronic. It used to be a lot of paper, a lot of people, a lot of meetings. And we also introduced Alex, which was kind of an electronic little funny guy who guides you through all of your benefits. And it's when you put in, I'm in this department, this position, it tells you what your benefits, benefits are available to you and what they cost and how you can save taxes. And so it was all electronic last year, and it went very well. So we'll be doing that again this year. The rate for our Medicare supplement, again, people who retire before 65, or people who retire when they hit 65 go off our insurance, but we have a Medicare supplement if they want to participate in that. They can get one from somewhere else also, but our Medicare supplement kind of is a little bit higher level because it kind of keeps them where they were before. That rate went down. And we moved FOP onto the death benefit, off the death benefit onto the life insurance. So they were one of the few that still weren't on our life insurance. Our goals for next year, again, stronger and more wellness programs. We want to have a healthy population, so we're going to put some more emphasis on that. Increased number of people in that program. We need to get our HIPAA policy updated, so we'll work on that this year. And the one thing, again, that you just, when you voted on the benefits for the changes for next year, one of them is that new employees will have access to insurance the first of the month after date of hire. Where before it was first of the month after 60 days. So sometimes it would be almost 3 months. Suzanne just told me a story this morning. We did an orientation yesterday with somebody, and when he heard that he wasn't going to have insurance until December, he was like, oh, I wish I had known that. So I believe that this will help support our recruitment and retention also. It's already, when I talked with Kray and we looked at what would that cost us, it's gonna be around $125,000, but it's already, those positions are already budgeted in the departments with benefits. So it's not gonna impact those department budgets. We may see up to $125,000 of extra insurance that we'll have to pay out of the employee benefit fund. So we've got that in there, but it's already it's already budgeted for the positions.
I
Thank
think
you.
that's a great idea.
I do
Yeah.
too.
Yeah,
Or we had to do it, but I think
Kudos,
it's great.
yeah.
yeah. So, yay, thank you. So that's the highlights. Again, staffing, I don't know if you have any questions about staffing. Again, depending on how much work each of our employees does in the benefits realm, that percentage of their wages are based in the benefit fund. Otherwise, if it's general HR stuff, it's on the HR. So the staffing size hasn't increased. The org chart reflects the structure as it is today with the changes we made earlier in the year. Again, you'll see in the budget section, we did the comp study last year. We're not doing a comp study this year, so you saw a decrease in the contractual services. That was probably the major decrease. In the employee benefit fund, again, this last year, with the IPBC, not only have we been able to really flatline our increases in premiums, except for the HMO, it's kind of been going up. We also have been building a terminal reserve. And so last year, we decided that we were going to use that terminal reserve and not pull from the general fund to pay some of these premium costs.
I'm gonna just stop there for a second.
Yeah.
Because, like, last year when we were putting our budget together and looking for ways to keep the levy as flat as possible, that's one of the tools we used.
Yeah.
We don't have that this year. Kevin and I we continue to look for ways we can keep a levy as low as possible, but that's a tool we used last year. And
Yeah.
it's not available this year.
Yeah. So we used close to $3 million out of that terminal reserve. It's really low now, so it's not there anymore. But we had built up a terminal reserve with IPBC that we used.
Using fund strength has been what we've done in the last 4 or 5 years to keep this levy as low, but we're just used them all.
Yeah. So this year you'll see some increase in our premium costs because we're not pulling out of the IPBC terminal reserve.
I'm going to deviate, I apologize
Yes.
to you. I just hope that during our budget discussions, that's a point that gets raised whenever you can. That sometimes is the unintended consequences, and we've got a perfect storm here of good, sound fiscal management, bringing, fund balances down, and then massive inflation. So we don't have a reserve, and we're facing additional expenses. So just, I just want people to understand that was just completely unexpected to have those things cave together, or collide together.
Mr. Reachik?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On page 48 of our packet, I was looking under the Employee Benefits Fund. The Employee Benefit Objective Level 1, number 40, contractual services, is now going up $17,634,000 and some change. It's about a 12% increase. Is that related in part because of the HMO costs that have gone up?
That increase is really because of that almost $3 million that we used from the IPDC terminal fund,
Right.
which we are not going to be able to tap this year. We're going to have to tap the employee benefit fund.
Okay, that's what I need to know. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Any other questions? Anything more you want to tell us? You've given us a lot.
Yeah,
Thank you,
giving you a
Cheryl.
lot. I'm sorry.
It was great, thank you.
All right, good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Who wants to come up?
Are you going to take
Come on,
them
we'll have a
individually
party.
for recommendations to send to the
However you
board? Or
guys wanna do it, I don't, my sentiment is let's get through the hearings and talk about whether you wanna do them one at a time or together.
just the different chairmen are doing different things. I'm just
That's
asking.
okay.
Lacey, you coming up?
We don't actually vote on that.
A little bit. Others are making specific
Well,
comments.
We all help Chairman
Forward,
Bueller
so.
come up with.
I'm just asking.
More people?
So the answer is no.
I don't know, I tried to, I don't want to walk through each and every highlight and goal of these next three budgets, but I tried to hit on a couple in each area, and I want these guys to help me as well. The chairman's done a good job, I think, in expanding the use of social media with Alicia and Kevin's help and really touching a lot of people there. Chairman and Finance Chair Scala have been integral in reviewing Kevin and Stephen's recommendations on ARPA, and so I think that's been a real highlight for Chairman Bueller. I noticed we have a direct reference to Chairman Scala in the second bullet. I think we should depersonalize that and just reference the position, not the name there, but that's just something there. In the goals, probably the most noteworthy is the first one. I know that Chairman Bueller very much liked to gather the new county board early. Right shortly after the new year, we've kind of talked, Scott and I, with the chairman about kind of getting in and kind of, it would be almost like a halfway point on the strategic plan. And certainly we want the next county board to understand the work that you guys did in developing the strategic plan, but also kind of making them take a little ownership and see if there's anything we want to add there. That's probably the best way of saying it. The second bullet there references the chairman's dog. That was just to see if he was reading it.
I was laughing at that. I'm trying
That won't be in the final version, but Ferris has made his appearance more than once, Alicia, thank you. But we won't have that in the final budget document. The second from the bottom bullet references CMAP and Regional Economic Development Initiative. And that's something that Chairman Bueller has been involved with, along with myself and Jim McConaughey, and Alicia, helping to communicate this. But this is going to kind of kick off later this month. On September 23rd, there's going to be a regional meeting in Will County. The Chairman and I will be attending along with Jim and Alicia. And we're going to kind of set the table for a 7-county regional initiative to get going. So I know Mike's excited about that. Other questions on what we've put down? Again, this is, we have shared these goals with Mike, and he's added a couple on his own, but this is kind of where he's seeing things right now. On the
under the chairperson's role in the future, under the 23 goals, with the change in elections and change in the legislative districts now, both federal and state, I noticed that there's a great deal of internal type of work with the board members. I'm just wondering, was there any discussion from the chairman in regard to maybe working with state and federal elected officials, or was that something that is just a given? I'm just thinking as goals have changed, positions have changed, districts have changed, it would seem to make logical sense that that may be a outreach for him, but he may have other plans, I don't know.
Yeah, Mike, I think that's a good suggestion, and you use the word given. I would say that is an answer that I would expect that the chairman is going to want to reestablish relationships with folks representing the new districts, but we'll mention that to him and see if that's something he'd like to add.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
And Michael, just so you know too, there's been an effort in law and government to reach out and create those kinds of opportunities to talk to people at the committee level too, as the districts have changed.
Thank you.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. My pleasure.
If you go to page 54, there's a little bit of growth in personnel there, and I wanted to explain that. The county board has provided the opportunity for countywide elected officials to opt not to take IMRF and provide a 401A option. We were able to find the monies for Chairman Mueller's first year, right? First 2 years, but we're going to go ahead and budget it this year. So that's where you're seeing the growth there. And then the county board highlights are on the next page, 55. This is your work. I did make a request, maybe at the August committee of the whole or county board meeting, if there was any input that folks wanted to provide. I did get a little bit of input, and I'll share that in a moment. But these are kind of the things we came up with, and we really invite your opinion on how do we want to add or alter this. I think our first bullet says, develop the strategic plan. I think that was a really good one. Yeah, Pam?
I'll let you finish, but I have a suggestion.
No, that was probably the main highlight of the group there. We've got a couple referencing the dimension unit. That seems to be a real priority of a lot of you, and we want to note that we're continuing that path. We had a good discussion with the Valley High Operating Committee yesterday on that. As a board, you've done your reapportionment. I think you're setting the table for the 18-member board, and I think that was a real highlight.
I just thought under the goals, building on what Michael just stated, advance and promote a new legislative program to the Illinois General Assembly. Maybe that also needs to include in federal representatives.
Great.
And then you've kind of got that covered a little bit better, so it's documented.
Yeah, one of those things that it's a given, but it should be
right,
documented as well.
Right.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes. Go ahead.
Thank you. Under the 23 goals, the second to the last, where it says advance and promote new legislative program, and I thank Member Altoff for suggesting the federal. I noticed that we are speaking of a particular program that would come out of law and government. Was there discussion, Mr. Austin, about other committees and what programs that they would be forwarding? I noticed that this seems to be a specific area of law and government, but would there be some other kinds of programs such as finance or transportation?
I don't intend this to be specifically out of law and government, and I don't think it reads that way, at least not to me.
Oh.
It would be the county's legislative program. Yes, it will flow up through law and government, but as we're developing that program in October, November, and then on into January when the next county board will adopt it, we can receive input from all the committees.
Okay, the reason why I'm saying that is because then, since I'm not on, for instance, finance or Valley High, I would think the direction would be not only the construction of the dementia unit, it would also be, for instance, the marketing of that unit as we are creating that. So I'm just wondering about other committees, were they voicing that they have specific directions that they would be going into? Maybe not, and that's fine. It just seems to be something I had a question.
I can report that when Valley High presented their budget yesterday to the Valley High Operating Committee, the question came up on the goal of the memory care unit, and there was a recommendation to change that language to very specific regarding the construction and implementation. So that's not covered necessarily under the Valley High Operating Committee's goals that would flow into here, but that was specific to the Valley High budget and the Valley High's goals. So it is representative.
Thank you. I just wanted to bring that up. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I did have a county board member reach out and maybe thought we could provide some training to county board committee chairmen once those new committees are established, and certainly we'll, staff will be working with committee chairmen in terms of whatever questions they might have there. So that would be something I think we'll have on our to-do list regardless of whether we put it on the goals list. And, there's other efforts towards consensus building, which is, again, it's one of those things that kind of falls into the given category, where staff are always be trying to build consensus as best we can. But I don't know if that feels like it wants to be added or not. Do we have any numbers we need to touch on this one? Oh, we're seeing a decrease, that's right, because we'll only have 18 county board members. We Member Vijay appropriately did the math. We are decreasing by about $121,000 in terms of board members' salaries. We are seeing about an additional $4,000 in increase, which is related to the staff support therein. So, and then county administration. What do we got for us, guys? The first one is, I thought, facilitated relocation to the ROE office. That's something it's an end of the year thing that Scott's been in the highlights on. And then the last bullet is the township policy framework, which was kind of a beginning of the year thing that Scott's been involved with. The next two bullets there, the GFOA awards. Kevin and his team have done great work there. But probably that third bullet, the Advanced McHenry County program. It's hard to overstate how much additional work this has been on top of everything else. But Kevin and his team, Stephen and our consultants at Brown Group, it's just a lot of work, but it's a lot of good work. But man, it's a lot. And it seems like it never stops. We get the requests every day. Any updates? And trying to figure out where we're going. And we've had to kind of tap the brakes here for the last 8 weeks, to just kind of reset where our priorities are going to lie. We're going to have some discussion with the Finance Committee tomorrow, and what size holes do we have to plug yet for our own budget? And but it's been a wonderful program, and as Kevin and I have said many times, kind of a once in a career thing to kind of administer, but it's been a lot of work. Proud of what we've done. I think Cheryl hit on the legislative committee. Kathy and Alicia have been instrumental in getting our new legislative software up and running. That's something that kind of feels like it happened behind the scenes, but it's a big deal. Big deal to change your legislative software after a decade, and I'm really pleased with the product that we're putting out there and making watching and participating in our meetings that much easier. Moving down to our goals, it seems like everything's related to welcoming a new county board and the new structure. We've got a lot on that. Nicole and Shaylin, as we mentioned, going to be working on the GIS consortium, which I think has the opportunity to be a real big win in 23. Our continued expansion of communications is something that I feel like Alicia and her team have made a lot of progress on in 22, and looking to continue into that into 23. I made a couple references. Yeah.
I just want to, did anybody else? I get comments all the time from people who just absolutely love the fact that they feel they're being touched more, just by the whole communication, outreach, and effort. I don't know if anybody else gets that, but it's the #1 comment when I go someplace and I'm out in public, the feedback I get back about the board. So, yeah, it just delights me to no end.
I made a couple references here to the enterprise zone because I think that's going to be something we talk about a lot in the coming months. The formal welcoming of Marengo, the expansion of that tool, and hopefully its utilization. It has been used, and we had a nice article a couple weeks back on some of the opportunities it has brought to Harvard and Woodstock. But if we can get something going down in Marengo, that would be just wonderful. So there's going to be some transition there, and how the enterprise zone is managed, and I think solidify it in terms of continuity and professionalism. So looking forward to more coming there. Any other comments or questions, suggestions on our goals and highlights?
Yeah. On page 60, Mr. Chairman, thank you. On page 60, I noticed under the budget, full-time equivalents, if I go down to finance, this last line, senior accountant, and it's funded by ARPA,
Right.
Will this be a position that will end after the you're saying quickly, let me finish my statement. All right. Given that the nonverbal signal from Kevin Busso is not going to end, does that mean that that will be a position that you will be asking for funding in the 23-24 budget?
More 25-26 budget, because it's gonna be
26-27.
You're right,
Yeah,
26-27. Yeah.
This
So
we need money come entering into 27.
right. So it'll be the fiscal year 2027 budget is when the funding for that position will transition from ARPA to the general fund.
Assuming that the board agrees with you, and based on the track record of the senior accountant, I would assume that there will be a lot of documentation to justify that.
Correct, and to Pete's point initially, and I do thank the board for approving adding the resources of the senior accountant and the Browner group to assist managing the ARPA program. So we're transitioning. My plan is, between now and 2026, basically, this position, the person is going to be working a lot on the compliance related to distributing the funds, because we still need to collect quarterly reports. We still need to file quarterly reports to the U.S. Treasury, annual reports to the U.S. Treasury, and that happens throughout the year, all the way through 2026. At the same time, this person is working on a lot of financial policies that we do not have right now, and a lot of that structure that we had to work on to make sure that we're following all the financial best practices and everything else related to that. So that will be more 27 and forward. There'll be an ask of the board at that point in time.
Right, because what typically happens is when you're under a grant, when the grant
Right.
goes away, the position goes away, but you're going to be predicting that this position will be critical for the finance department, so that we will continue to monitor after the ARPA funds have gone away,
Correct.
other kinds of duties.
Correct.
Thank you, Chairman, I yield back.
And just to clarify, when we proposed this position, that was part of the proposal, that it was a permanent position, not temporary related to the grant. The county was going to hire an account position or that kind of position, whether ARPA was around or not. We just found a way to fund it at that point for 5 years.
From this perspective, it makes logical sense, but I don't want to hold a board member 3 years down the road to my thoughts, because I don't know what will happen in the future, at least in 60 days.
The only other thing I mentioned then is fiber. I don't think we've mentioned fiber yet. It's on the county board chairman's goals, it's on the county board's goals, and it's on the county administration's goals. It has been and will be a big part of what we're trying to accomplish in the coming months. Developing and coordinating these relationships between private fiber providers, the residents, the state, the county. It's been an interesting time. I'm proud of what we're doing, proud of what we put together so far, but it's all on paper at this point. I'm going to be speaking a week from Saturday at the IML conference downtown with Matt Schmidt from DCEO and HR Green, our consultant on this, and because they're really watching what we're doing and the program that we're laying out and the structure. So we got a good message to say, but at this point it's just a message. We haven't built anything. But we're hopeful. The maps look really good.
Got a plan before you can move.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
Any numbers we need to carry?
Risk management?
Good luck.
That's the last.
Get popcorn and everything.
Just remember how fast I did 3 budgets.
That's a subtle hack. That's a subtle hack.
Got charts.
Oh, charts, here we go.
I will say, you see on the right side of that graph, the fund strength that risk management, our tort fund had. And you can say we had too much money, and I would accept that. But we used that fund strength to help us ride down and right-size our levy. We did so all along, knowing at some point we're gonna have to build that back up. And we're there. We needed to put money back into that fund because we used it to fund operations as we've tried to right-size our levy. But as we said all along, we can't do this forever. And I think Scott can help you understand that.
Yeah, and we can talk a little bit about that at the end if there's time and something we can maybe postpone to another meeting. And this should be very quick, though. I hope.
No hurry.
Yeah, but.
Just asking for more money.
So, well, and, I don't know why I formatted it this way. It wasn't like that when I had my screen. So anyway, and I can gloss over a lot of this, but we can go into detail if you want. So really who, what, and how is risk management. We are really an internal service provider resource for the county, for the organization, for the employees. So we provide that service internally. Conventionally, we protect and ensure that the people and the assets of the organization. We identify areas to minimize and mitigate risk. We call it also known as the safety police or fun police, as some like to call us. That's self-proclaimed. We manage claims, and that's really to preserve and protect the financial resources. And that's an active role. That's not just getting a claim, pushing out to the insurance carrier or to our third-party administrator. It's a lot of rolling up your sleeves, getting into the claim, and actively managing it. And that makes it a very efficient process, but also as part of being a resource to the county, allows us to be in tune to what's going on and meeting the needs of our departments and employees. The state's attorney's office is a key partner. In fact, a lot of the litigation defense is handled in-house. They are obviously very active, shoulder to shoulder with risk management. In many cases, they're out in front, we're behind supporting. There's a statute called the Local Government and Governmental and Governmental Employees Tort Immunity Act, or the Tort Immunity Act as it's known, and that really provides the foundation for the risk management program. It allows the county to issue a tax levy, and that tax levy, though, is restricted in its use to really to only a key, specific area. So we can't use that for general fund purposes, for example. So we talk about the tort fund; those monies are restricted. So when you levy a tax for that, those monies are locked for specific purposes. I just want to point out it's a hybrid program, so the county maintains a basis of self-insurance, $250,000 for tort general liability claims, $650,000 for non-law enforcement employees under workers' compensation, and $1 million for law enforcement under workers' compensation. So it's pretty hefty self-insured.
Do we evaluate that periodically? Those okay.
Yes, to make sure it's right sized.
Yeah.
And you can either that up or down, but there's a cost. You can reduce your insurance costs if you go up, or you can increase your policy costs if you go down, because the insurance company can take on more risk. But yes, we do.
Every year? Is that done annually, or is it
Not every year, but it's periodic.
Okay.
It's part of our due diligence to ensure we are right sized. And the insurance fund. Insurance fund is its own fund. It's not commingled with the general, dollar-wise, it's commingled, but it's its own separate fund. As I mentioned, the tax levy goes to fund it. It's restricted in its use. It does not compete with the general fund for purposes. So what you see in this budget is separate and apart from all the other budgets that you've seen. Okay, moving on.
Could we go back one? Thank you. The Chief Information Security Officer, does that report to the state's attorney's office or the deputy?
IT. That reports to IT.
Okay, so that's a whole separate area.
Yes.
Thank you.
So then thank you. I skipped over this, but we'll go back to it. So Deputy County Administrator, Risk Management Coordinator, and the Administrative Coordinator are really managing the day-to-day risk management. State's Attorney has 6 plus full-time employees. Those are attorneys and support staff that are funded through the tort fund, through risk management. And then the CISO, as it's called, that was a position created, say, probably about 3 or 4 years ago. But it's really important. It's half funded through risk management. The great question is why? Because cybersecurity is one of our leading areas of threat. And a Chief Information Security Officer really focuses in on that cybersecurity. So loss prevention is your nexus to help fund that position.
Thank you.
Before we go into the looking forward, I just want to give you some understanding of how we think 2022 will end up. The original budget was over $4 million. Projected expenditures looks like we're going to come in a little over $3.6 million. So we're going to come in $445,000 of unexpended in that budget. That's going to roll back into the insurance loss fund. It's not going to go to the general fund, and it's money that will be used for the next, for the next year. I'll touch on why that number is so high, and it's not a budget error, but it's just how we approach this budget. Insurance-related expenses for 2022 were over $1.25 million. That was an 18% increase over the previous fiscal year. So we got a big insurance bill last year. If you recall, the risk management asked for a budget supplemental to help offset those costs, which was granted, and that money, in essence, allowed the risk management budget to grow to cover growing insurance costs. And as we go through these slides, you'll see there's charts on each side, and that kind of helps paint the picture of what we're talking about in many respects. And they're a little small to see, but we can go into more detail as we go. I'm sorry? We can send them out as well. So last year we ended up with $1.1 million. We're projecting to end up with $1.1 million in losses. Losses in a variety of different things: automobile accidents, workers' compensation claims, lawsuit settlements, defense, unemployment insurance. That is the third highest in in the look back, going back to 2012. As you can see that chart at the very top. You can see last year, 2021 was the second highest. 2015 was a really bad year. But that eats into that fund balance, which we'll talk about down the road. The ending fund balance is projected this year to be $1.2 million. Last year's ending fund balance was $1.75 million. As Pete talked about, that fund balance strength has been depleting, and we'll talk about the need for shoring that up with tax levy dollars. The $546,000 of the fund balance was used to cover the 2022 program. So looking forward at this budget, first off, I'm very proud to present to you a maintenance budget that really, in essence, is a $3 reduction over last year's budget. I'm proud to say that. It's a reduction. Every dollar counts. When we talk about the losses and that budget differential I spoke to at the last slide, that's based on how we predict or how we budget for our losses. The county does not budget for worst case scenario. If I wanted to, I could put in $3 million, $5 million every year and probably be comfortable that we'll cover what our losses are going to be for that upcoming year. But that's not a reasonable budget approach. That artificially inflates the budget. We don't also want to undershoot it, because then I have to come to you for a budget supplemental or emergency appropriation and explain to you why I undershot the budget. So based on various tactics like trend analysis, understanding what claims have a likelihood to settle and to what extent, we try to predict what a reasonable budget will be, so we're not artificially inflating it or undershooting it, and it arrives at about the $1 million range for losses. Sometimes it comes in higher, sometimes it comes in lower, but that's just the budgeting approach. It's not worst case scenario, but it is deemed to be sufficient based on what we know. And so we continue to do that this year. One key change, it's not a big change, but every dollar counts. A couple of years ago, the workers' compensation third-party administrator contract was changed from a fixed fee to a per claims basis. And actually, for the past 2 years, that was $15,000 each year of savings because of that change. Because claims, we've only had a lower number of claims than we otherwise would be paying for under the fixed contract. That's going to continue this year. The risk is, if we have a really bad year for workers' compensation claims that go to a third-party administrator, that number, that equation, may not work out. So, but 2 years of success, we're looking forward to a third. This budget before you contemplates a $2.75 million tax levy. Last year's was $2.5 million. Working with Kevin and Peter, and we'll show you how we arrived at $2.75. It is essential that the risk management fund be continued, have money infused into it through the tax levy. You'll see the trend, but this property taxes are the key source of revenue, key source of funding for this. There's other chargebacks and there's a few other areas of revenue that come in, but that doesn't amount to enough to sustain the program. And this is essential because if you have a claim and a lawsuit and a settlement, you have to pay it. And if it's not paid through here, it's paid from other sources such as general fund or whatever the CFO would deem appropriate. But it becomes a liability. In this budget, there's a few key projects and initiatives we're excited to announce. An OSHA 10-hour safety course for not all the employees, but for key employees that would benefit from that. And that just helps them understand risks and just how to make a safe working environment. We've done that a few years ago. It was very well received. We're looking to do that again. And that's a certified course. So the employees taking it will have a card. CPR training. And this is something that the county had done, I'm going to say probably 2012, 2013, for employees that were interested. And it was a certified CPR class. In working with the safety committee, which is a committee representing employees from various departments, they recommended a CPR training class, and based on that recommendation, it's something we want to build in. The cost of those two programs are probably less than $4,000. They're going to be absorbed within the budget, so we're not asking for a supplemental, but they're exciting changes, and I think that's going to really help the employees just better understand what they need to do and be able to respond in the event of an emergency. Indoor air quality testing is on the plan for next year. This is really to monitor the air quality within all of our buildings. This will be the the third cycle. We do it about every 5 years. And what's important about this, we're at our 5th year cycle, is you establish a baseline of your air quality. And under workers' compensation, if an employee makes a claim for, say, a respiratory illness, and they say, well, it's because of the work environment, it's really it's a hard thing to dispute unless you have that baseline data to say, no, mold has not been present in this building, and therefore, that's it. So, and then just participating in with the active assailant exercises, that's something that's ongoing. We're looking at Annex A in the county administration building, so something just to keep fresh in people's minds. Our anticipated insurance costs are going to go up. We're expecting about 10.2%. So from $1.25 million to about 1.35 million. Valley High, we're predicting an 8% increase, which is lower than in the past. You may recall the past presentations, Valley High and public sector long-term nursing care was a very high insurance, a very difficult market. We're seeing that calm down a little bit, but it's still high. Property has been a big pain point in the insurance industry because of a lot of the losses just from natural disasters, et cetera. And we feel that we're also going to be adding on the public safety training facility, which will increase the cost to the county in the ROE space. But excess insurance and cyber insurance are trending very high in the industry. It's 30% is really what we're expecting. Excess are the policies above your primary, so if you have $1 million primary, and then we have a $5 million on top of that. So that market is, we're trying to get our arms around it. I'm working with the brokers. It's challenging. So we're anticipating a big increase. That's a big factor into the overall. Cyber has, over the past years, it's going up, not quite exponentially, but it's gone up significantly year over year. And we're looking or expecting to see that again. So, all right. Highlights and goals. You know, we can go in any detail. I talked about some of our key initiatives, but I think most of them speak for themselves. We're proud of what we did, proud of what we're excited about what we're going to do. We can talk about that if there are any questions. Okay. Performance indicators. This is just on here. There's really a story that we like to tell is to show that risk management has an active role in working with in-house claims. That's happening in those offices, just right across that wall. And also COVID is still, clearly present on the performance indicators. It's still with us. We still have workers' compensation claims because of COVID. But, if any questions on the performance indicators, happy to respond to, but I think really they speak for themselves.
The auto claims, that's not because fleets are older, is it? That's just
accidents, gear strike. Yeah. Both, people hitting our drivers or our drivers.
Right. Both sides. Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
And some we subrogate. In fact, anybody third party to us, we subrogate them all. We're very successful on that. Just key changes that this budget has in the past. Previously, there was $110,000 budgeted out of the risk fund for the managed data and response service. And this is IT's service to monitor web traffic. And if all of a sudden they get a big spike, they say it's a red flag, something's going on. So this is a 24/7 monitoring service. And there was a change earlier this year to take that out of the tort fund and fund it through ARPA. Thank you for the change. It really helps the cash flow. I think but on this chart, if you see that there's a big green, spike, that is actually that $110,000, and that is our miscellaneous expenses. Next year, that will drop down because 110K is out. With every election, when new public officials take office, we have to provide the surety bonds by law, and actually, risk management has historically provided that, and that's typical with the counties. And it's not a big dollar amount, but it's something that has to be done, and something that we do. They vary depending on the elected official. All right. We talked about the training budget for OSHA CPR courses. But I want to talk about that last bullet point, and that's a supplemental request to reclassify a risk management coordinator to a risk manager position. And there's a lot of reasons for this. When I'm going to go back to prior to my entry to this organization, county administrator had looked at how risk management was run, how a deputy county administrator's position was structured, and it was the goal to move the deputy county administrator away from risk management, and to be less hands-on, less involved, and over the years that has been taking place. So meaning that vision, as you notice, that what I do is a lot more of the administrative as opposed to risk management. So that has been going on, and by doing so, though, there's been that shift of some more of the strategic visioning for risk management, some of the active involvement in the claims management, reserve setting, defense strategy, and so our risk management coordinator has really assumed and taken on a lot of that role, to the point where I would argue that that position is no longer a risk management coordinator, and it has changed accordingly, and I'm asking that position to be elevated with this budget. The CPQ has been developed, or actually the CPQ revised. HR has it, it's under review, but that is something that this budget year we'd like to formally make that change. A lot of what is being represented here is already being done. We're not sure where the dollars are going to come out. It's going to be a function of how the position is rated, but there is money in here, and we'll see how it shakes out.
Scott, is there an advantage from an insurance perspective, or just in general, to having a manager as opposed to a coordinator? Is that looked at differently by any kind of an evaluation, that's a better position? You've got, a more professional or more hands-on individual as opposed to just a coordinator? Yeah,
I think by its title, there's tends to be a little bit more clout or significance to it. Whether the functionality is there, I
understand that, but I mean, just from,
especially even like in the industry, a risk management coordinator is not viewed to the same level as a risk manager.
That's what I'm asking. Okay.
And so I certainly would say yes to that. And that's in insurance or peers. So, great question. Thank you.
Mr. Regent.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Given that being the case, how many people will the coordinator to risk manager, how many people will they be supervising?
Well, they currently, supervising is not really a good term, but currently the 0.25 of the administrative coordinator actually works with and under the direction of the risk management coordinator, or excuse me, risk manager. So there is actually employee work, but that position does not, the risk management coordinator or manager does not have any problem in the day-to-day, like the disciplinary or performance review or anything like that. Although if there was an issue, they would report it, to me, and I would report it out. But there is direction given, and that the administrative coordinator works directly under or with the risk management coordinator.
Okay. The reason why I say that is because under your page 68, under comments and justification, it says the CPQ has been updated and sent to HR for review. Key changes which are already being done include a supervisory level. And so I'm not hearing an uptick, but the way in which the industry looks at the position is different than the way we may traditionally look at it. Given that being the case and that their involvement will be greater, I then wonder, since your position currently, and I turn to page 64, is the Deputy County Administrator, your paycheck is assigned through risk management. If it's shifting to county administration over the years, then why would that not be reflected under page 60 under county administration as being a role? In other words, make it, I don't care what it is, let's say for our discussion, 0.75, and then next year will be 0.5 and 0.25, and county administration, then you'd see an adjustment here. I don't see that in that budget.
Yeah, and that's a fair question. I'll tell you, that's something that has been under discussion as to whether or not the deputy county administrator moved from 100% risk to maybe share between the two. This position will still have a role, in fact, a significant role, a leadership role over risk management. That's not going to happen.
But that will slowly, as you talked about, it's shifting, is it not?
It's been shifting for years, Mike.
Okay,
Scott was
that's why
hired in
I'm just saying it's not.
2014. When we hired Scott and put him in this position, I envisioned moving to a generalist county administrator and moving away from what I had really where someone who was the risk manager with the title deputy county administrator. It's been funded by the tort fund to provide relief to the general fund. If I had all the general fund in the world, I'd move it 100% to the general fund now. But I don't. I don't. It's just that simple. Where Kevin and I are trying to figure out ways to patch this together. I think Scott would be most appropriately, largely funded by the general fund, but
it's not
there yet.
Ideal.
Any other questions? Okay, how do you guys want to proceed on, I'd like to take literally all 6 of our budgets, and I mean, I'm okay with what we've done with them, but I don't know how the rest of the board feels. Ms. Altoff?
Yeah, I'll make a recommendation that the committee approve moving all the budgets as presented to the full board.
Okay. Is there a second? Mr. Young? Any additional discussion?
I just want to comment on a couple of things. First of all, thank you. I think a lot of great information, a lot of great detail. Did hear a few things about the tax base and what may have to happen there to fund these types of things. We heard some of the things in the Transportation Committee. I'm sure we're hearing it. All the committees are working on happening. I do want to caution though, I keep hearing over and over again, inflation and all these things coming together at one time. I made this comment in transportation, and I'll continue to make it. Certainly inflation has played a role in this, but this has been coming for years. This is not, we heard about it last year, we went back and looked at the previous budgets, previous meetings, it's been talked about previously as well. So the idea that inflation only has gotten us to this point is simply not correct, in my humble opinion. And I think that this has been something that's going on for a while. We need to, and I know everyone's looking at it very carefully and what we can do, what we can't do. Clearly it's not here, but in other departments, looking at things like, doing things from floating debt out there, other things we may have to be thinking about doing, which I think is appropriate for government to be looking at, thinking about and doing as well. Otherwise, the problem is going to get much more difficult year after next year and the year after that and the year after that. So that's my only comment in general on the process we're going through right now.
Mr. Rajek?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I too would like to forward the recommendations of the various departments. I want to make, as a side note, I want to appreciate, I have contacted Mr. Austin and the fellow departments who work with him to provide me with lots of information prior to this meeting. And so because of that, I feel that my questions were fully answered ahead of time in the areas that I did not question on. So I want to thank Mr. Austin and his associates for doing that work. And so I would recommend passing forward. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Can we go back, is Kay Bates still on or not?
See her on the screen here.
Okay, well, I want to give her the opportunity to participate if she's still here, that's all. I just can't tell from the way the screen's set up.
Say, hey, Kay.
Hey Kay, do you have anything else you want to add?
No, not at all.
All right, in that case, I think I can do this as a voice vote, correct? Because this is just a recommendation to go forward. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
Okay, so that'll go forward. It brings us to capital plan. We do have a personnel matter, folks, so don't leave yet for executive session. But if I can get capital plan and communications administrator report, we've gone farther and faster than I thought we were going to.
Good morning.
Good morning. I'll walk briefly with you around our property here and talk about what's happening. We'll start on the southeast corner, which is Building A. You may notice that the facade that was looking very ratty now looks
Less ready?
a little less ratty. The facade has been removed and has been replaced with exterior grade plywood and ice and water shield while we await the metal panels that will finish that off. The tuck pointing has been completed. We're waiting for the PTO, the roofing membrane provided site windows are next up. The glazer is currently working on the west elevation of the government center. So when they're finished with that work, they're going to move to Building A. We're no longer awaiting materials for the windows. Those are in place. We're just finishing up with the work on the west elevation. So as we swing around the west, we're going to stop at the main entrance. That work is phase 6, the final phase of this building envelope project. And that work includes the curved glazing panels or curtain wall that sits above the entrance system. The entrance system itself, we recently completed a forensic investigation. We brought a company in to bring a boom lift up and test those glazing panels to see exactly why, to confirm exactly why those panels are leaking. We suspected that the metal seals that put pressure onto the glazing up against the interior was what the issue was. That issue was confirmed to be that. That lets us move forward with confidence in building a scope to replace those seals and pressure plates rather than thinking that that is the problem. We have the benefit of a company providing that expertise for us. We'll also be replacing the entrance system below, the aluminum doors for the entrance and egress of the building as part of that project. Now we're completing phase 5, which is the northwest corner of the building. The through-wall flashings have been completed by the masonry. The mason, as I mentioned, the glazing systems are going in place now. That will have completed a 360 degrees attention to the 1990 edition of the building. That work has been completed successfully, or will be completed successfully. Then we can go out to Valley High. We'll take a quick stop out at the sewage lagoon, because why not? We're replacing the 2 cell liners that provide an impervious bowl for the lagoon to rest in. That work has been scheduled to take place in October and has been confirmed that the materials will be on site and the work will take place at that time. It should be done at the, it'll be a relatively quick process, either late October or early November. The therapy gym shower project, as you know, we had some issues getting through the plumbing inspector. That has been completed. We're on to the last 2 showers now. The plumbing work has been completed and has passed. Drywall is going in today. Next week we'll be painting, millwork, and followed up with tile. Contractor's saying late October. I'm saying late October, probably into November. That will be worked out. The memory care expansion, last month, County Board approved a contract with an architectural and engineering firm. This month, we're working on receiving proposals from a construction management company. Those proposals are due at the end of this month with the goal to have the proposal in front of the county board in October for discussion. If the proposal is accepted, we would then move on with that process. Our kickoff meeting for design is September 28th, and we'll continue for about 3.5 months into design. We'd really like to have the construction manager part of that process. They do value engineering, constructability reviews in an ongoing way, rather than getting too far down the line where it's no longer as an effective partnership. Once design development work is complete, it goes into construction document development, again, about 3 months, puts the bidding in late winter or early spring, and then from there we begin into the construction process of that project. That's what I have to offer today. If you have any questions.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Communications.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
All right. So, I wish. As you can see, I have a new format for y'all for communications, try to make it a little cleaner, a little faster, and a little bit more straightforward. Divided into accomplishments, the communications strategic plan, goals for the next month, and the ways that county administration has helped other departments. We are trying to become more of an internal service provider across the county and, of course, save money. So you can see that there are many different things that we did over the past month to become more in compliance with the county strategic plan, or communication strategic plan, and one of them is right here on this screen right in front of you. We are streaming live right now onto YouTube, in addition to on our meeting portal online. So trying to reach new audiences and try to make it a bit more accessible for everyone. So that's one thing. But we also want to look forward in our communications efforts. One of the things that we're going to be doing over this next month is engaging in a survey of the public to see what they would like to see out of their county communications. It's 10 questions. We're partnering with the Public Health Department to use software that is already in place, that has already been purchased by the Public Health Department, so no additional cost. And it's through Mentimeter, a software that they have to do an online survey about our communications. This survey was put together by all your communication staff across different county departments, and we all work to help develop it. Another thing that we're going to be looking at going forward is, I'm sorry, no questions? Another thing we're going to be looking at going forward is making sure that we put together more web pages about the county. One of our strategic tasks is to have an About Us page and kind of connect the way that our brand connects with Natural and McHenry County and the Economic Development Corporation as our county MCH brand, and what it means to be McHenry County. So stay tuned. We're also going to be looking at developing a volunteer page. So that is a general port that connects everywhere in McHenry County government, not the county itself, but just the government, where people can volunteer to help out the government. So I think that should be fun going forward. But there's also something I would like to report out. County administration.
Alicia, on that, are you also going to put potentially availability of serving on specific types of commissions?
Yes.
Okay.
There is a boards and commissions portal part of
I am well aware of that, but in our communications, if we're reaching out to people, is that information also going to be available there as well?
That's what I was anticipating, yes. I'd also like to report out on a successful campaign that we have done on behalf of the Planning and Development Department. Right now, if you haven't done it already, the Comprehensive Plan Survey is still out. Please, for the love of everything holy, don't make a grown woman beg. Please, complete the survey if you haven't done it already. It's really, really easy. That being said, we helped them do a Facebook boosted paid campaign. So what does that mean? Well, Facebook allows you to spread your message a little bit farther if you put a bit of money in it. Now, I'm sure you're all thinking right now, Alicia, where did you get that money? We know you don't have the budget for that. Well, that's the best part. The money came from planning and development, so there was no extra cost on that. They had already had it budgeted for the marketing of this survey. We had just, helped them be able to push it out through social media. And it also checked a box for us with the communication strategic plan that said we should do, a paid marketing campaign to try to promote our social media accounts more. So we did the paid requirement under the plan, did not spend money out of the county administration budget, and help planning and development all at once. So that's good governance right there for you. All right, moving on to the second part of that report is your metrics. You can see the different engagement graphics that we have on the lower left-hand corner. As you can see, we're going to try to focus more on engagement. What is that? It's seeing how much our people are interested in what we're pushing out. So as you can see, LinkedIn, we do well there. I mean, we've got a lot of engagement on that channel, and it's small, but it's mighty. So we're going to try to, get people more interested in the content that we have. You can see that we've got a very healthy reach campaign, or a very healthy reach on the next graphic over, though it is supplemented by a paid campaign a little bit towards the very end there. And finally, you can see that our following is growing across all channels. And now I'm going to take a breath because I've talked a lot at you. Any questions?
What are we doing to push out follow-up on COVID?
Follow up on COVID?
Mm-hmm. We talked about the fact that, again, in the beginning, there wasn't necessarily the best communications with constituents. They didn't know where to go to get information, blah, blah, blah. Is there any effort thereafter to have some kind of information that we did an analysis? These are the changes that we've made. This is the response that we got. Anything like that that shows people that we are well aware of the fact that it was new. I mean, a pandemic of that magnitude was kind of new to all of us, and that we evaluated how we responded. Here are the good things, here are the bad things. I mean, and there's been modifications, revisions to how we respond to those kinds of things.
I'm going to be honest, I don't know, but I'd be happy to follow up.
And maybe I'm responding overly much, and people could look at me and say, don't do that. I just think it's a way to show that, as you stated, government is responsive, and we did an analysis after we experienced this so that the next, whatever that pandemic may be or situation, we've incorporated these changes or these modifications.
I'll follow up on.
You're right. You will follow up, but we did sort of almost a too early after action debrief in the summer of '21.
Right.
And we did talk about how there was some elements of we could further refine communications across the organization, but we should dig that out again, Scott.
I'm just, that's my gentle reminder, is all I'm doing is, yeah.
Any other communication questions? Thank you.
And one more item before we go to executive session, Mr. Chairman. Finish my report, and there has been some discussion amongst board members about the Regional Board of Education. And the fact is, we had 6 of 7 positions vacant this spring, and the lone member of the board was appointed chair and appointed the rest of the board. We have done some research with our state's attorney's office and with regional superintendent, and kind of come to the conclusion that all of the appointed members, all 6 of them, if they want to retain their position, should run again in the spring. And if positions are not filled, if people chose not to run, then whomever is chaired in the spring can make the appointments again. But that's kind of the position that the state's attorney's office is taking right now. I've talked with the regional superintendent this morning. She's kind of confirmed that with the state and with the county clerk's office. So all 6 of those positions will be eligible for running in the spring. There are regional appointments, so we're going to have to work with the regional superintendent and the state's attorney's office to get that, which regions are available, maybe get that online and get that posted. That's the conclusion we've reached. Thanks.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
I want to thank Peter for all the information on this issue. It was kind of a surprise how some of the board was reconstituted with really no knowledge. And transparency should be one of the things that we're all about. So, and I'm glad that we've got this part figured out, because I don't want these people to have to start doing petitions, I think this week or next week.
It's really soon. I
Yeah.
didn't do the calculations, but for the elections in April of next year, it's coming pretty soon.
Yeah, I think they're coming up, and then they have to file by December, so you have to make up their minds here pretty quick.
So that's a really important piece of information that we should be pushing out on our talking.
And if somebody's interested in that position, let's get them out.
Exactly.
So thank you, Dan.
Thank you. That brings us to future topics, if you have any, and then we have the executive session. Does anybody have any other future topics we haven't addressed? If not, can I have a motion to go into executive session for personnel matters? By John Young, seconded by Mr. Vijay. I guess we have to just by roll call, right? Mr. Kearns?
Come on, please.
We got the K's gotta leave.
Okay, needs to go.
Okay, we're getting ready, okay?
Bye, Kay.
Bye-bye.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
I'm ready.
She's in Florida.
No, we got to do roll call to go in, that's all.
I know, I just-
Okay.
Ready to go.
Mr. Kearns?
Yes.
Yes. Here. Ms. Altoff?
Yes.
Mr. Young?
Yes.
Mr. Vijay?
Yes.
Mr. Collins?
Yes.
And I vote yes, we go into executive session. favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. We gotta come back into session. Tell us when you have a microphone ready, and I will call us back to order.
Is that back?
Oh, ready?
Okay, roll call, Mr. Kearns.
Here.
Ms. Vijay.
Here.
Mr. Young.
Yes.
Saltoff.
Present.
Mr. Collins.
Here.
And I'm present. We still have a quorum. We're back in session after an executive session. I have no further actions to take. Can I have a motion?
Motion to adjourn.
Ms. Saltoff, second.
Ooh,
Come on.
she's quick today.
Okay, I need a second. Come on.
Second.
Come on, Mr. Kearns. All those in favor say
Jim.
aye.
Aye.
Thank you, folks.